Welcome all to the Public Planning Committee meeting of January 26th. Sadea, are we in conformance or in compliance with FOIA? Thank you very much. Would you call the roll, please?
Here.
Here.
Here. Is there a motion to amend the agenda?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to move the chairman's report under appearance by citizens and before new business.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Passes unanimously. Thank you. I believe we have one person who signed up to appear. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Zendaya, who is that? Thank you very much. Skip Hoagland, are you here? Your turn.
The only one. Interesting. Skip Hoagland, Windmill Harbor. Why hasn't a master land plan ever been created into perpetuity so we'd have the tools necessary to save ourselves from overdevelopment, untenable traffic, and ongoing runoff pollution caused by encroachment of our creeks, rivers, and estuaries? Polluted oysters are the first bad sign. 1 million years to create, destroyed in 30 years by having no master land plan. Why has one road and one bridge all the way to I-95 never been taken into consideration? What does DOT say about this one road and its maximum usage? With Bluffton and Hardyville's out of control overdevelopment with 200 here, 300 there, and no master land plan, has any thought been given as to what will happen 10 years from now? Not to mention how long it will take to get off Hilton Head in a hurricane or your next trip to the airport. Has any thought been given about increased wrecks and traffic delays, emergency vehicles reaching hospitals, our future road repairs and delays, and negative impact on 3 million tourists, by 3 million tourists versus 45 local residents that we now experience? Tourism is welcome, but not at locals' expense. What does DOT have to say about these same 3 million tourists entering Hilton Head on one road and one bridge? Don't you think it's time to stop kicking the can down the road? The bridge is nothing but a stent for your heart and will do little to nothing over the next 10 years. It's a $300 million waste of taxpayers' money. I am a 47-year resident. I moved here for the Charles Fraser vision for a low-key, high-end retirement and resort that took nature and the environment into consideration. It's like the song goes by Johnny Mitchell. They took all the trees, they put them in a tree museum, and they charged the people $1.50 to see them. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got until it's gone? It's not your fault. You are all just another long line of failed, controlled, kick the can down the road appointed officials controlled by the developers, the crooked town managers and town lawyers in conflict with developer clients, chamber tourism interests and their illegal profits, and the secret Greater Island Council members' special interest greed. Unfortunately, too late to repair all the damage done. Only will get worse with no master land plan into perpetuity. We are at 6 pounds in a 5-pound bag. We're heading to 10 pounds. And it's like a slow-growing cancer. If you don't stop it and remove it, it will eventually kill you. Also, defund the chamber's millions in aid tax and the missing millions of hospitality taxes that are unaccounted for. And add this to Senator David's 1% tax and let the tourists pay, not the locals, to buy lands and improve our infrastructure. And technology provides all the tourism we need for free. We need to defund this chamber and stop the robbery and stop the insanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hoagland. We next move on to the discussion in the chairman's report of Jonesville. I have a couple of comments that I'd like to make to the residents of the Jonesville area. Your concerns have been heard and are shared by council. I think you know that because of the conversations we've had recently. I think there is a Hilton Head way of developing, and what we have seen in the Jonesville area and other areas on this island is a regional developer's approach to development. That is not the Hilton Head way, and the council recognizes it. I'd like to reiterate, staff has been focused on the LMO amendments to improve your situation. Sean will talk about that in more detail in a minute. Thirdly, council is committed to do what it can to mitigate to the greatest extent possible the negative impacts of the proposed developments. Fourth, council has analyzed a moratorium versus expediting LMO amendments and has asked staff to expedite those LMO amendments in the district planning and also in the district planning while exploring other opportunities. And I can't say more than that at this moment. I am hopeful you will respect our sincerity and commitment to make things better for you and better for the island. Thank you. And there are seats up front and scattered throughout if you want to join in. I see 1, 2, 3, 4 in the front here. Please make yourself comfortable. Sean Coleman, thank you very much.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, committee member, Sean Coleman, Assistant Town Manager and Director of Community Development. It's a great day in Hilton Head Island. I'm happy to be in front of you today. Mr. Hoagland, you're going to get your wish. We're going to do a master plan, and we're going to do it right, and we are going to do it immediately. As it relates to Jonesville, I want the committee to know that staff has met with representatives from Jonesville and other areas, Folly Field, Forest Beach, and understand the pinch points and where our code is not delivering our expectations. We did meet with the Jonesville group a couple of weeks ago with several staff members and disciplines to help address some issues that they're experiencing out there. So we had folks from natural resources and stormwater and planning and traffic, and we outlined a plan of attack for the Jonesville area that will go in parallel with our LMO code changes, district planning, and recalibration of expectations for the future of Hilton Island. And so I wanted to cover a few key points. So the town is engaged in doing a traffic impact assessment and analysis of the Spanish Wells, Jonesville area. And we'll complete that in the next 2 to 3 months and have that available to help us make decisions, help us drive any infrastructure changes that need to happen in and around that area, whether it's through the town CIP, the county CIP jointly, or at the expense of a potential project that would, an applicant that would propose a project in that area. We have mapped all of the properties in our GIS system and our tracking to make sure that area residents are notified on any activity that occurs in the area of Jonesville. There are pending subdivision applications in Jonesville. Only Bailey's Cove Phase 1 has been approved. Subsequent phases for Bailey's Cove, Tidelands 1, 2, and Twin Oaks have not yet been approved. We continue to work through the review process. We continue to push the applicants meet expectations on value-added communities that provide the design and aesthetic and experience that I think will be long-lasting rather than just maximizing the number of stamps or lots. I hear them called stamps. It kind of irritates me a little bit. They're just selling stamps. That's really not the way to approach it. You're selling a home and an experience. So, but we're working actively. All of our review is done by a team. Everyone has eyes on this. It's not an individual decision, and so we're making sure all disciplines involved are part of that team discussion. We have a development review team. They call it the dirt team, you know, but, and I say, well, let's get down and dirty then. Like, let's make a difference and pay attention to details, but it's a full team approach. We've begun taking our major subdivisions and major development plan reviews to the Planning Commission to live in the sunshine for information and input from the Planning Commission. And we'll soon be adding those same level of projects to Town Council to bring forward for input and information. Again, the town LMO amendments, I want to thank town council. We spent 2 days this week in strategic planning, and I'm happy to say one of the reasons I came here many years ago was because Hilton Head was known for being a well-planned community. And I came from the city of Greenville, where I was working on district plans there, and really saw an opportunity to build upon the Stony Initiative Plan, the Chaplain Initiative Plan, Bridge to the Beach, and others to help define Hilton Head for the future. And so we are actively working on a code assessment. We had a full LMO SWOT analysis done. We've evaluated it. Staff met last week to include the town manager with that code assessment team and our internal team for 2 days at USCB to really understand where we are weak, where we have opportunities to improve. Also, a few things that we're strong on, and I don't want to lose sight of that, but to really understand where we're at so we know where to go and be purposeful and efficient in delivering a code that meets expectations. So that happened last week. Our town council at their strategic workshop yesterday supported a full plan to complete these district plans, growth framework, LMO changes, both in an immediate term and in a long term. And so we are actively engaged. We've already written some code. Some will be on the agenda later today, but some additional amendments will come forward in the 30, 60, 90-day timeframe. District planning will be engaged with Jonesville as a priority district to advance immediately for assessment and determination of the right land use pattern and intensities that should exist to help guide that development area for the future. And then by the end of the year, we'll bring forward a complete, comprehensive, relevant and current code that reflects Hilton and Island expectations, grounded in our plan, our comprehensive plan, and all of the good work we'll do with individual communities in these districts. So I just want to make sure that that's conveyed. We have now committed, this is the #1 priority at staff, and we will make sure that this is not budged, moved, unless we get hit by a natural disaster. I think that's the only thing that I would allow my staff to focus on, okay? So again, district planning, part of that'll help guide this long-term update and some of these short-term actions that we'll bring forward here in the next 2 or 3 months. We also have in our town capital program the assessment of non-vehicular infrastructure out there, pathways to serve bicyclists and pedestrians. That assessment's underway, and we'll bring forward whatever the options are to implement a project, and just want to make sure that that's what we've heard from the community, and we're advancing that as part of our CIP, and there is funding to complete that assessment and then move that forward. I mentioned we've included in our GIS, our Geographic Information System, mapping of all of this, and that's going to be very critical to understand where there are additional opportunities or threats, areas we need to protect, areas that could be opportunity for developers to come in, and we want to make sure that we're protecting and understanding what those long-term impacts, short-term and long-term impacts could be. I wanted to share that information to let you know that we are taking this seriously. We are meeting with members of the community, and my team, with the support of the town manager and town council, have this as our top priority, and will advance it immediately to address these concerns.
Thank you, Sean. I would like to reiterate 2 items for emphasis. Council has made the decision to make Jonesville its #1 priority in district planning. And secondly, yesterday in the strategic planning session, and I think I speak for everyone on council, growth management is our #1 issue before the community at this time. Thank you. There is a group of citizens from Jonesville who would like to address the Public Planning Committee. My expectation is that the first few will be 3 minutes, and after that, the president or chairman of the Jonesville Preservation Group will have longer to speak. Is that correct? Okay. The first speaker, Kelly LeBlanc.
I wanted to thank you all and staff. We know that you're working really hard on this issue, and we do appreciate it, and we really appreciate being engaged to help with develop the LMO as well. So I'm Dr. Kelly LeBlanc. I'm the author of the survey on overdevelopment and the secretary of the Jonesville Preservation Society. I'm going to be presenting the results of the survey, which can be also seen online at jpshhi.org, jpshhi.org. There are currently 3 major subdivisions planned for Jonesville Road with a total of 243 units, which could triple our population. The JPS team formed just over 1 month ago and quickly realized that this is an island-wide issue, and our strategy is to engage all citizens of Hilton Head that are concerned about overdevelopment. To date, we have over 1,400 responses to the survey. Question 1, on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you about overdevelopment? The average response was 9.5 out of 10. Question 2, we focused the survey on residents. 83% say they were full-time residents. Question 3, I said 2 before, that was 2. So question 3, we received responses from all over the island, 50% from the North End, 45% from Mid-Island and South End, and 5% from off-island. Question 4, do you want the town council to roll back zoning and limit overdevelopment? 96% said yes. Question 5, do you want a 6-month moratorium on major building projects? 91% said yes. Question 6, their top 3 concerns of impacts were traffic volume, 93%, quality of life, 91%, and environmental impacts, 87%. The current comprehensive plan does not adequately address those top 3 concerns. The lack of workforce housing is a major consequence of overdevelopment. More short-term rentals leads to more expensive long-term rentals. Question 7, where is the best place for workforce housing? 49% said that workforce housing should be within walking distance, in other words, 1 mile to public transportation. Short-term rentals threaten the quality of life of residents. Question 8, should short-term rentals be restricted to specific areas? 83% said yes. I want to thank you again for your attention. I want to say this, I want to thank the crowd also for coming. This crowd would not be here if there had been public notice of the developments on Jonesville Road. The Bailey's Cove subdivision was approved without public comment. The LMO must be written to require public notice on application of subdivision, major building projects, or major rezoning. The public has the right to respond to applications of major building projects before they are approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Prior to the meeting, it was made known to me that Pete Shaw is ill, but there is a substitute for Pete Shaw. Would that person please come forward?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm not sure if I'm an adequate substitute for Pete Shore, but I do have some vested interest in
Your
what's
name,
happening.
sir?
My name is Newton Green, and
Thank
I
you.
am extremely vested in what's happening on Jonesville Road. I remember Jonesville Road when it was dirt, so I've seen many, many iterations of Jonesville Road. Throughout the years, my career within AT&T and IBM, I have designed and implemented communication systems and data systems across the continental United States as well as across Europe. So I have some understanding of planning to implementation. So I just want to point out a couple of things in looking over the documents associated with the developments on Jonesville Road, which I think are some major oversights, some misses. If you look at the traffic configurations, it would appear to me that not enough analysis was done on increasing the traffic over 50 to 60%. There is no way that access from Jonesville Road can be accomplished just with that one turn going into Spanish Wells Road. A great deal of attention now needs to be given to Miller Road. heavy focus needs to be given to Miller Road. Now, given that, there are 3 points that I believe the gentleman I'm representing would have brought up today, is looking at the plan as it is right now. I don't believe, from my analysis, and I'm looking at the time clock as well, that a traffic study was done encompassing all 3 developments. If a traffic study had been done with all 3 developments, there's no way the amount of houses that are there right now would have been approved. So one of the things that we're looking for is another look to ensure that adequate attention has been given to the increased traffic any development will pose on Jonesville Road. Safety, another issue. If you look at the current configuration of what is being proposed, there is a recreational area. If you look at that recreational area, you will see access to it is directly across Jonesville Road through 2 blind turns on the road, an extremely hazardous and potentially dangerous area. That obviously needs to be looked at again. Also, whoever looked at freshwater pond there, again, I don't think did enough homework. If the freshwater pond fills up, it's going to flood Jonesville Road. So again, I think that needs to be looked at as well. So again, my background says, do your homework before you implement something. Don't spend millions of dollars on something that's going to be pulled back, fought over, and not implemented. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Donnie Kunitz.
Thank you. I'm Donnie Kunitz. I have been an island resident for almost 40 years, and for the past 21 years living on Jonesville Road. This morning, I was asked to speak a little bit about the environment and the impact the growth has had on it. And it's obvious through my discovery and research that the town already knows the impact. There's no reason for me to go over it again, to talk about the 100-year-old oak trees that are being cut down, displacing wildlife, the impact on our waterways, the beach, even the marshes. You already know that. And what I discovered is we lost our vision. The original vision of this island wasn't what it is today. So, to Sean mentioned the GIS mapping. So I went backward, 20 years ago, almost, in 2004, to look at those maps, compared them to today's maps. The part that's alarming is the number of trees that have been taken down to put a stamp on the ground for a house. We need to stop that. Then I did another little research, one on the town's website. You already have instruments in place that were voted upon in the 80s and 90s to protect this island. We just need to revisit the vision. In 1980s, we were the first place of its kind to put in a tree ordinance to protect our trees. Later in the 80s, there was a land trust that was developed to protect the land. Again, later in the 80s, the town commissioned a long-range master plan. It's already here. We just follow it. Those master plans were to slow down the growth. And in the 90s, there was an area that was to manage the growth of the island, protect the areas. In fact, to date, over 1,300 acres have been purchased by the town to protect those lands. These protected areas precluded commercial development, hotel development, and new homes. These are your words. This came right out of the town of Hilton Head's article in 2018 from the Chamber of Commerce, and it's there to today. So you're saying what we're asking for. Then, in 2020, there's a plan that y'all put out. If we just read it and follow it, we take care of all the problems. In that plan, talked about right sizing, talking about how the growth of this community is more than this island can handle. On page 8, which is my topic, environmental goals. And I'll read to you. Environment, to protect and preserve the natural environment of Hilton Head Island. It's simple. So what we're asking you today is relook at the vision that we had originally The same thing that's causing all these people to come in here today to speak. They're passionate about it. I thank you, and I thank everybody here as well.
Thank you very much. D. Anthony. Thank you, Ms. Anthony.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Dee Anthony. I live on Walking Horse Street, which is off of Jonesville Road. And going through the survey and reading the comments and looking at things, there have been a few things in our household that have been highlighted. One of them would be the hospitals. Our emergency room has 24 beds. Without having enough primary care physicians, patients are sent to the emergency room. I have personally sat in the hallway in the ER due to overcrowding. To date, our inpatient beds are at 100% capacity. Overcrowding affects the quality of health care for residents and visitors alike. Another thing that our household's been talking about is our schools. What's the capacity of our schools? Hilton Head High School, according to the county website, is at or over capacity. This makes for a very tough learning environment. Our schools are overburdened. They are lacking teachers and substitutes. If a teacher is absent, a class has to split between 2 other classrooms. This creates huge class sizes and stress for the students and the teachers. What's our school's capacity? Is any of this being taken into consideration as part of the planning, any of the town's planning? I think we need to step back, take time, evaluate. We have a hard-working staff. This staff needs time to make the changes that need to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you. And Daniel Anthony.
Daniel Anthony, President of the Jonesville Preservation Society. First off, let me just say, I wrote this speech about a week ago because I knew that this week was going to be I was going to be bombarded with all kinds of things. Y'all too. Y'all had a busy week. So I took a little bite out of this, but not all of it, okay? So here we go. Good morning, everyone. My comments here today are not meant to offend, but they are meant to get your attention. There has been a lot of talk lately about what does Hilton Head stand for? What do people think when they think of Hilton Head? What are our core values? The question to me is simple. It's heart. It's the love that we all have for Hilton Head, the love we have for our homes. We have all made the decision, for one reason or another, to make Hilton Head our home. But it really only boils down to one thing. We all love this island. We love the history, the wildlife, the beaches, the picturesque sunrises and sunsets, our neighbors and communities, the God-given beauty that surrounds us. Whatever your passion is, this island provides it. For decades, this island has been subject to the greed of developers, and we, as a town, have allowed it to happen, all in the name of progress. We have not been good stewards of what God has given us. We are at a crossroads. We are in a very unique position. We can, together, change the future of this island. We can right the wrongs of past administrations. We can, in one voice, declare Hilton Head is no longer up for sale. I ask, what say you, the elected leaders of this island? What say you? Are you going to take a breath, step back, reaffirm your commitment to the citizens of this island, the commitment all of you have expressed, the commitment of making Hilton Head the elite world-class community that we all say we want it to be? Or are you going to continue the decades-long practice of prostituting Hilton Head to the highest bidder? This is your time to make a difference, your time to tell everyone this is our home, this is our island. The moratorium will give you the break that you need, the break to step back, reflect, give thoughtful insight to the demands of this island before going forward, before making any more mistakes. As I have shown you through surveys and comments, you have the support of the community. You have all, at one time or another, asked for the residents to get involved, to communicate with you, to express their concerns. Well, they have. Residents from all over the island have expressed their concerns through emails, comments, and our own independent study, the results of which you have. Take time to read through this information. Although my highest concern is for Jonesville, if you study the information we provided, you will see that this is an island-wide concern. Each neighborhood wanted town officials to protect them from overdevelopment. This is not a hard decision. This is simply choosing to do the right thing over what has become the status quo. We are better than this. You are better than this. But this will take courage. This will take strength. You will have to push yourselves beyond your comfort zones. I believe in each and every one of you. I believe you are all good people who want to do what's right. You must search your hearts, search your souls, because the decisions you make today, we all will live with the results tomorrow and forever. You must do your duty, protect Hilton Head, protect the residents. That is your oath. You have all heard at various town meetings the concerns of the residents of Hilton Head, traffic and safety being at the top of the list. Are you all really ready to gamble on the safety and well-being of the residents of this island simply because you may be afraid to offend a developer, or perhaps it's just not politically beneficial for you? We have all experienced the loss of life on Hilton Head because of poor planning, because of oversight. When we fail to plan, we plan to fail. We need to be proactive, not reactive. Please, for the love of God, let's make this island a safe and secure community for everyone, residents and visitors alike. A place where we all can be proud of, a beacon of light that the whole world can see and envy. But in order to do that, we must gather all the information so that you can make a sound and secure decision before moving forward. We, the residents, have given you our insight. We are still waiting for the traffic analysis and the district analysis to be completed. You cannot make a sound judgment without these two items and more discussion about the results. So I ask you again, please institute the moratorium before it's too late. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony. I think it's important for my colleagues to be able to also say in a brief word or two, because we're in the interest of time, what they think about this. Glenn?
First of all, I want to say I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your sharing your sincere concerns. I feel those concerns. We spent the last 2 days in strategic planning. Number one item is to amend the LMO and to come up with management of control of development on this island. I will support that, and we're prepared to move forward with that. So thank you for being here.
Ms. Bryson?
Yes, Chair, thank you for the opportunity of speaking about this. I took my oath of office on December 6th. Shortly thereafter, I received lots of emails about the Jonesville area. So I drove out there myself to see what was happening. I also looked at the subdivision plans that were being considered. And then thanks to Mr. Anthony and Dr. LeBlanc, I got a tour on a golf cart, which gives you a more upfront and personal view of the Jonesville area. So I share your concerns. I hear you. We have been pressing on the town manager and staff to help find resolutions. I really appreciate the report that Mr. Cullen gave us today. He gave a lot of information out. So, and I hope that you picked up on some of the key things. Certainly the district plan for Jonesville, and perhaps if there's time, Mr. Chair, he could give just a thumbnail view of what a district plan is like. Not a detailed description, but just, you know, like a couple of sentences so that you know what we're talking about. In addition, one of the things he talked about was notice about what's going to be happening in the Jonesville area. I've heard that. I agree with it. I'm hoping that in our LMO amendments will include some stronger notice provisions for the public. In addition, the LMO amendments and the schedule, the acceleration, I've been pumping the gas on this. I plead guilty to that, and I'm so grateful that the staff has heard us and that they have a 60 to 90-day plan for some code revisions. It will take a little bit of time to go through the process before the Planning Commission, and the Public Planning Committee, and then the Town Council. So bear with us. We are pressing the gas as fast as we can on that. And what I will tell you is that when I look at decisions about what is coming before Town Council, I thought it might be helpful to develop a set of standards or qualifications in making my decisions. So all of these are equal consideration in my book. Here's my 5-part standard. First of all, how does it affect the safety of residents, workforce, and visitors to the island? Secondly, and again, these are equal in my view, does it have respect for and protection of the natural environment? Thirdly, does it provide for stewardship of all our resources, financial, land, freshwater, natural waters? Fourthly, how does it impact the quality of life of all our inhabitants?
Thank you, Ms. Bryson.
And fifthly, does it provide respect for and protection of heritage, especially the native islanders, the Gullah heritage on this island? Those are my standards, and that is what I'll apply in doing my best to move forward our concerns about growth management on this island.
Well said. Thank you. Ms. Becker.
Thank you all so much for being here. When I look out, I see how government works. It's because of you that we sit here. And it's our responsibility and our duties to look out and to reflect your wishes in our actions to the very best of our abilities. I was one of you sitting in that seat 8 years ago, when my neighborhood was also impacted by many of the things that you're here about today. It's not academic for me, it's real. I will say that we have had successes in progressing through the LMO and making changes, but this is the first time, and I commend my council members, our town manager, and our staff for moving with us quickly now, because this is the first time this has been a priority, to understand that what is happening on Hilton Head is not consistent with what our vision of Hilton Head was intended. The lives that have been impacted are yours, it's mine, and it's across the island. I've read the survey responses, and my heart aches. When I was first contacted by Bob and Duchess, and they said they had no idea what was happening, my heart ached, because as it happened to us, we had no idea. And we were not as well organized as you are, but we got organized and we made a difference. We still have challenges in our neighborhood. There are still challenges at the south end, to the north end, and in the midsection. I'm here today to tell you that yes, I know that the statement has been made, that we are in the process, and we are moving with all due diligence and speed to make it happen. I'm concerned about what happens between now and that 90 days. If I had my druthers, I would not only take a breath and work as I worked quickly, but I'd stop and I'd make sure that nothing happened between now and when we have regrouped and put residents first, honestly, put residents first in this community first, and built the type of island that we all moved here believing we were moving to. I will do everything I possibly can to support you and to make it happen as quickly as possible and make sure that no further damage is done across this island. It's why I'm here. I hope that's why I was sent here. I believe it is, and you have my promise.
Thank you very much, Ms. Becker. That is the conclusion of our discussion today on the Jonesville situation and the town's plans going forward. I again want to emphasize that this is a sincere priority for the town council and staff, and I think you can count on the staff's constant communication with you and also the council's attention to your issues. Thank you very much for coming. If you don't intend to stay, please exit the room as quietly and as quickly as you can because we have agenda items to follow. Thank you very much.
Glad you were here.
I'm sorry I make the hard.
You got it. You heard our promise.
Please exit the room as soon as possible.
Gotta get to work. We're gonna make some money. You guys took up a lot of my
We'll keep working on it.
Okay, great.
The next item on the agenda is new business. The first item is a consideration of the proposed amendments for the land management ordinance for the town of Hilton Head Island. Is there a staff report?
Yes, there is, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got it. Thank you very much. We'd like to bring forward today some proposed LMO initial amendments that you guys, I think, are aware of. You know, obviously, we're ramping up to get a series of these to you, but let's get started with some.
Brian, it's my understanding that this committee first saw these amendments as proposed in a list of priorities previously, and that we have also reviewed it in more detail subsequently, and this is what we hope to be an approval to send it on to council. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir, this was part of a bigger set. These have been drafted and are ready for review and consideration to send on to council. Hopefully we can clear a few of these from the deck so that when we come back with the next batch, we're not overwhelmed.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So one of the first ones that is before you, do you want me to go through these line by line?
Well,
I know you're aware of these.
I think it's important for each member of the Public Planning Committee to weigh in on any issue that they have a question regarding. So you don't have to go by line item, but I do think you ought to highlight what is proposed in the ordinance.
Okay.
So the public knows.
Well, the first is on Exhibit A, is dealing with staff waivers. This was a process where town staff was able to issue waivers from the LMO concerning a number of different items. And so we're asking you at this time to remove that ability from staff to grant these waivers, and instead have these considered as variances that shall go before our BZA instead.
Okay. Is there any question on that, in that regard from you, Ms. Becker?
No, sir.
Ms. Bryson?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name.
Brian Eber?
Eber, Mr. Eber. As the former chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals, BZA, I recall this coming before us. Every month, we would receive a report from staff about the waivers that staff had granted, and the board developed a concern about that and asked for staff to make a report on that. And then the response, which we appreciated at the time when I served on the BZA, it's great that we were taking a careful look at that, but the BZA was concerned about how many more cases they might hear as a result. So we asked the staff to go back and take a look at that. And I know that Ms. Dixon made a report, and it looked as though because of nonconformities, addressing nonconformities remained in the LMO, that the impact on the number of variances that the BZA might consider would be less than feared at first. And I don't know whether you want to say anything else about that, but I want to send a message back to my former BZA colleagues that as I sit now, I'm still listening about that, but I believe the BZA felt more comfort based on that staff report. I'm glad to see this moving forward. I will certainly support the change, and I hope that the BZA will continue to communicate with us if they see any issues in this or anything else with regard to the LMO. And I don't know if their staff wants to add to that. I see Ms. Lewick standing up, who used to staff the BZA. She's used to me asking questions. Sometimes I'd put her on the spot. Perhaps I did today, but I tried to give her a little warning. So.
Thanks, Ms. Bryson. I have the staff report that Ms. Dixon prepared for the BZA, and there was a summary of how many waivers staff had approved within a time period between June of 2020 and July of 2022. And there were 34 staff waivers that were issued. 20 of those were for substitutions of nonconformities, which is not, again, being proposed to be removed. And then of those, 14 did not deal fully with nonconformities, and then 5 of those 14 that remained would have to go for a variance to the BZA, so that pertains to the volume concern that the BZA had, and it likely won't be a huge increase in caseload to the BZA.
Thank you, and I certainly support the change.
Thank you. Glenn, anything to?
Yes,
And I think
this is,
what I'd like to say is we have a number of items, so to the degree we can keep our answers to yes or no or a question, I would
it's
appreciate
hard for a recovering lawyer to do that, Mr. Chair,
that's
but
why
I
I
will do
said
the
it.
best that I can. In any event, I see this as a proper correction of the LMO. The number of waivers is of concern. I'm not saying they were abuses. I'm not saying they were necessarily erroneous, but we do have other processes there to create waivers, to create exceptions, and so forth, and I prefer to see those processes followed. So I support this as well.
Without objection, let's move to the next one.
No.
Can we do it at the end, Chet? Just thank you.
So the next proposed amendment will allow variances from all sections of the LMO other than use, density, and height. The next proposed LMO, any questions?
Yeah, is there anything on that one? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The next amendment will allow outdoor screened bike storage in the 2 districts that the town has, both the LC and the CC zoning districts, which will also allow for more specificity as it relates to screening for the bicycles that are stored on site.
Mr. Chair, I'll just jump in quickly. This was recommended by the BZA.
Correct.
And I support it. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on this one? Glenn, Tammy?
Not at this time. I believe that we can move on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
The next amendment is seeking to clarify the definition of manufactured use classification as it relates to the size and type of a brewery. What makes it a manufactured use versus a bar or eating establishment? And again, I believe this is a recommendation from the BZA as well.
And again, this committee has been hearing these issues now for several months, so without objection, we can move to the next one.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next amendment is replacing instead of using June traffic counts, instead going with July traffic counts. This is an effort to provide better data for traffic decision data-driven decisions.
Again, without objection. Thank you.
This next amendment is a change, kind of like a change when the plantings are done as part of a subdivision or a LMO, development plan review.
I think just so the public understands what this is,
Sure.
there's a, well, why don't you explain it? It's probably
Yes,
better
so what this will afford the town is a mechanism to ensure financially that the plants that were planned and approved actually get off to a good start, they can mature and grow healthy. And so financial burden is being pushed now onto the developer to make this happen.
But there's also the other side of it. We used to require the plants to go in early,
Yes.
and they
Yeah.
were destroyed by construction, and this corrects that.
Right.
to
Yeah,
allow
this
them.
allows them to shift that to a later date when it's more appropriate to plant.
Thank you.
This is a win-win.
It is. Yes, ma'am.
This is common sense.
Yes.
I agree. As my mama said, don't plant that this time of year, Patsy. It's not going to grow. So in lieu thereof, a performance guarantee until the planting is done. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Without objection, go ahead.
The next amendment deals with sign updates. This is kind of the modernization of how signs are coming into being today versus when you went out there by hand and changed things to where it's more of a electronic situation for signs.
Give an example, please.
These changeable signs, as we know, like for gas, for example, gasoline, gas stores prices are fluctuating quite often. So this allows for the change of your sign no more than twice daily. So it's not something that's rolling and scrolling and changing all the time. This is a twice daily change that can be done electronically.
And I think a clarification that was needed throughout these discussions was this does not mean that there's going to be a backlit.
Nope,
There's no lighting, there's nothing
No
along
lighting.
those lines. So that had been clarified. I just want to, I'm not sure, Sean, if that's what
Becker,
you're
you read
doing.
my mind?
Yeah.
Yeah, the signs look exactly like an analog. A lot of this has to do with staffing, and some of these enterprise only have a staff or two. So for someone to go out and change with the old little suction cup and pole on high ones that we have monuments, it allows a mechanism to be changed from inside. It flips the price. It looks like analog, so no, it is not like a backlit light. So
Thank you. Any other comments?
This case came up before the DRB involving the McDonald's revision, and I came to understand that all this did was it allows them to change the price on an item or the listing of an item on their electronic menu. That's all, rather than have someone go out and change it mechanically.
Yeah, it's just a modernization of our signage
Yeah.
is really what we're going here.
I support this.
Without objection, go ahead.
This next amendment amends the remaining sections of the code that were kind of missed when we did our big floodplain mapping update a couple years ago. So this is regards to measurement, how it's measured, how things are measured for a flood zone, and just clarify the remaining LMO sections that need to be amended.
Height is an issue in the community and in our conversations today. Does this actually change the height of a building, or it's how we calculate it?
I would say not overall. It's in relationship. We used to base everything on the base flood elevation.
yeah, boy, I'm getting my exercise today, so it's great. Yeah, it doesn't really change the way we measure it. When we did the FEMA map updates a year or so ago, we changed the base flood elevations changed here, and we made sure there was protection for residential, non-residential development. When you're not in a flood zone, you measure from existing grade, and we're just making sure that that's clarified. And so we're just making sure the LMO is consistent with the flood control ordinance.
Thank you. Any further comments on that? No. Without objection, move on to the next one. Thank you, Brian.
This next amendment deals with, I think it's important to point out, these are existing minor subdivisions, and the goal of this is to allow for better communication and a better process for those people that live in existing subdivision when minor changes are done.
That's not clear to me. It may not be clear to the public. What is a minor subdivision, and how does this impact the people around this minor subdivision or within it, or what?
Sean, sorry.
Sean, there are chairs up front. There are chairs up here that you're welcome to use.
Yeah, this one, it's really more administrative. Owner's consent's required for all other applications, but for some reason, it was not listed for minor subdivisions. Minor subdivisions are subdivisions that are 5 or less. And so having owner's consent, right, is an important piece to make sure we're processing in agreement with the owner. So.
Thank you. Without objection?
Mr. Chair, so I think the bottom line here is this does not affect the subdivisions under consideration in Jonesville.
No, not at all.
Thank you. Without objection, go ahead, Brian.
Again, this one is another one that is provide standards for previously platted subdivisions where proper notification and process and to the existing residents within the subdivisions. Again, this is a minor subdivision.
But again, I want the public to understand what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so if you have a previously platted subdivision and you are modifying the lot configurations to increase the density beyond the original approval, there is a set of criteria and a process that this goes back before the Planning Commission to review and make sure that it doesn't increase the impact. There's a correct infrastructure and other provisions. So there's a list of criteria that are part of that evaluation. And so it forces that back to the Planning Commission to make sure there's concurrence about increasing density through replatting of these previously platted subdivisions.
So the goal is to protect the residents of the existing subdivision.
Right, so it goes to daylight, it would be at a public meeting at Planning Commission, and if the Planning Commission thinks it meets the criteria, they'll make a recommendation that it be approved.
Okay. Any comments on that one? Thank you. That's the list as I have it. Am I correct in that?
Yes, you are.
I'd like to have a motion, and then we'll hear public comment.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we recommend all of these changes forward for approval by the town council.
Is there?
Second.
There's a second. Call the roll, Zendaya, please.
I think he wants to comment.
Oh, I'm very sorry. Yes, of course. I almost got it, Chet.
I'm Chester Williams. The only issue I want to make sure that you're all aware of is with respect to the first one, the removal of the waivers. It may not substantially increase the work of the BZA, but it definitely will increase the work of the BZA. But more importantly, it's going to complicate the development process, often for small developments, single-family development, that sort of thing. And it's, you know, the recommendation says it's more appropriate for any waivers for varying from the code to go to the BZA. I mean, the waivers have been in the code for years. They're fairly minor, and they help development often in the native island communities. And they're all going to have to go to the BZA. It's going to complicate things for them, and I think you just sort of think about that twice before you move forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chet. Are there other public comments? Any final comments by Public Planning Committee? Zendaya, please call the roll.
For the motion.
For the motion.
Yes.
Yes. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the consideration of a proposed ordinance to amend the land management ordinance to create a new use called Islander Mixed Use within the Sea Pines Circle District. And I believe we'll have a staff presentation and then the opportunity for the applicant to address the Public Planning Committee.
If I could, before we start on the next agenda item, we had sent some additional proposed general LMO amendments pertaining to two definitions as well as an accessory use provision. They were proposing changing definitions for multifamily, single-family, and the elimination of divisible dwelling units. And if the Public Planning Committee chooses, we could send those back to the Planning Commission for a public hearing and then bring them back for full consideration.
I don't want to take a lot of time, but I do think you should hear opinions of the Public Planning Committee.
Okay.
Ms. Becker?
Yes. It's over. You know, as I've read them, and I'm sorry, I know that you wanted one-word answers, and so I was trying to be as quick as possible, but I can make it longer. As I know the land management ordinance, and I know the residential neighborhoods on the island, there's in conflict there with expectations and with proper land use, and I think this change corrects that, and it should be done with all speed.
I have no objection.
I have no objection to the process. I agree that we need to take a look at these.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh?
Discussing in the packet that was distributed.
No, it was not, and that's why we're just passing it back to the Planning Commission.
Mr.
Sure.
Chair, I think it might be helpful to just, if I can read the summary, if I've got the right one, Ms. Lewick, you can tell me. It says, the prepared amendment proposes modifications to single-family and multifamily definitions and eliminates divisible dwelling units, parenthesis, commonly referred to as lockout units, close parenthesis. That's what we're talking about. Am I right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
But there's also the discussion that we were going to have the definition of single family and what that meant on a single lot. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's what the summary was meant to include. If
Yeah,
it didn't,
right.
That's correct.
maybe another parenthesis would have helped. I don't know.
Yes, we'll get you a copy.
Do you need a motion, or is that
No,
we're just
no, I think,
recommending
yeah,
it go?
we can just go back. Yeah. All right. All right. Now you're going to
Yes.
work onto the land management ordinance amendment?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So
Thank
now
you.
we have another text amendment proposal that we would like to discuss with you. It's called Islander Mixed Use, and this was applied for by Josh Tiller of J.K. Tiller and Associates. And the request is for a new use to be created with conditions within the Sea Pines Circle District. And that includes creation of a definition for the new use-specific conditions for that new use, as well as some exceptions from our development form standards. And again, I wanted to remind everyone that this is a text amendment request, and although there is a specific development that this applicant has in mind, it would be applicable to the parcels that meet the conditions within the Sea Pines Circle District.
And just so that we understand, this does not impact the base zoning. This is an add-on.
It's a new use that would be allowed in the Sea Pines Circle District only as proposed, correct? So the base zoning is still Sea Pines Circle, and if approved, this would be a new use that would be on the menu of uses allowed within that district.
Thank you, Missy.
And so we're recommending that the Public Planning Committee review this and then make a recommendation on it. So again, I'm just going to summarize the applicant's request. The applicant also has some slides that they would like to do as well, and then I'll provide some staff analysis on the request as well. So first is just a summary as it was proposed. And so it's a new use, and it proposes a new definition, which is on the screen. The use is called Islander Mixed Use, and it's a development that includes 2 or more different uses, which shall include multifamily. Actually, I'm sorry. This has our proposed definition, not their existing one on the screen, so I apologize for that. But I will read it from the amendment itself. So it's a development that includes 2 or more different uses, which shall include Islander mixed use and 1 or more of office uses, as described in 1610-103F, or 1 or more of the commercial services uses described in 1610-103G, or some combination thereof. Such uses should be functionally integrated and share vehicular use areas, ingress, egress, and pedestrian access. Group living dormitory use is allowed within this use type. So pretty much their use category that they're proposing is very similar to our mixed use definition, but they also want to include group living dormitory use. So the request also includes separate parking spaces required for residential at 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit, and then separate parking spaces required for non-residential at 1 per 500 square feet of gross floor area. And they're proposing this use be permitted with conditions, and those conditions would include that the use must be within 500 feet of an education use, that short-term rental would be prohibited, and that it would allow that this use type could participate in a shared parking plan. So they also have some changes to the development form standards that are proposed. One is that it would have undefined density, meaning that there would not be a density cap for what's proposed, but the density would be limited by the applicable design and performance standards. And they're also looking to request a height exception of up to 55 feet. And again, the Sea Pine Circle height limit is 45 feet for all development. So now I'm just going to go through the staff analysis of the use. Certainly it's a concept that we've been discussing for some time with the LMO committee and the planning commission. It's certainly a worthy for more discussion, and we've been working with the applicant team for some time. The definition does have somewhat of a circular nature, and so we were working with the applicant to propose a different definition because it referred back to the use type, Islander mixed use. So the proposed definition removes that circular nature, and it is what is up on the screen right now. So we had that proposed change, and the applicant was amenable to this definition change. So mixed use is allowed in the Sea Pine Circle district, but it has a density limit of 12 dwelling units per net acre and 10,000 gross floor area for non-residential. Again, so the Sea Pine Circle district mixed use does not allow a shared parking plan. So that's what's different in this proposal, of course, is undefined density as well as the inclusion of shared parking applicability. So the use as described by the applicant and the intent was that it would be providing housing for islanders. However, as drafted, that use for the undefined density as well as the use is not currently tied to any affordability component or workforce housing or fair market rents. And so just wanted to point that out. Also, for the group living dormitory use, it's not currently allowed in the Sea Pine, group living is not allowed in the Sea Pine Circle district. So as proposed, this would be a component that would only be allowed as part of this proposed use, Islanders mixed use. Also as proposed, there isn't a unit mix. So per their definition, they could have a component of commercial use, and then the remainder could be all group living because there isn't a unit mix that's part of the proposal. Staff was considering that there could be a unit mix proposed, somewhere around 20% cap to the dormitory use.
I'm sorry, what was that percentage? Sorry. What was that percentage that you're recommending?
Perhaps 20%.
Okay, thank you.
So again, the proposal is for undefined density, and that it would be limited to those applicable design and performance standards, height, parking, setbacks, and buffers. The other applicable district we have within the code is the Caligony Resort District. It also doesn't have any density, and it's also defined by its development form standards. So again, I wanted to point out that the density is not tied to workforce housing, and we had proposed or recommended that it be tied to some sort of affordability factor, or utilizing some of the standards that we already have in place as part of our workforce housing program, and the workforce housing agreement requirement that we already have in our code. So the proposal, again, is for 1.5 parking spaces for the residential and 1 per 500 for non-residential, as well as the shared parking plan. We do allow shared parking plans for other uses, not mixed use currently, and those would allow up to 50% of parking spaces could be part of a shared parking agreement. Those become recorded with the Register of Deeds, so they run with the land. It's a permanent agreement that's made. And so this is something that we allow for other development types if they meet those criteria. And typically there's where you're looking at differing parking demands based on those uses. So you would have, commercial use is occupied during the day and residential in the evening, something like that. So the proximity to an education use currently as proposed, the proposal is that this use type would be allowed within 500 feet of an education use. So you can see from this graphic, we mapped a 500-foot radius, a 1,000-foot radius, and 1,500. Certainly, walking or biking is reasonable between 500 and 1,500. And then the next slide identifies how many parcels are within those distances. So there were 23 parcels that could be impacted if, as proposed, this use would be allowed within 500 feet, 34 parcels within 1,000 feet, and 49 within 1,500. Because if this is a use that is desirable, it may be because of those walking and biking tolerances. You may look at considering allowing it to be expanded such that this use could be within 1,000 feet of an education use. So again, the height as proposed is 55 feet. Again, the Sea Pine Circle District is 45 feet. We just talked about some of the changes that are coming for in our previous amendment set. So currently, residential is measured from 13 feet above mean sea level, and non-residential is measured from 11 feet. And that we have the proposal that Mr. Eber just talked about, and that we're also going to change it to the 13 feet for residential, or 11, or pre-development grade, whichever is higher. So that's what was in that previous amendment set. And then currently we have waivers, and we're removing the waivers. So currently, in this language, of course, is proposed to be removed, that you could seek a waiver for architectural embellishments. But as proposed, and we just talked about that amendment may not be allowed anymore. So we did also go out and find some buildings and their height. So this is Water Walk. It measures at just under 59 feet. And there's two different buildings here, Aquaterra buildings out at 55 Gardner. This is the 3-story. It's 44 feet, 10 inches. And then their 4-story building is 54 feet, 6 inches. So just to give some context as to 3- and 4-story heights on the island. So overall, staff has been working with the applicant. We still have some concerns based on the overall intensity of the use, the size, scale, mass, and have been working with the applicant to try to address some of that analysis. And certainly there is a development that's proposed, and we would like to hear if the Public Planning Committee also would like to see some additional analysis on some of the impacts that could occur should this use be adopted.
I don't even have to ask you.
Thank you, Sean Colon again. Yeah, so I want to link this back to the previous conversation about master planning and making informed decisions. And this is a text amendment that would apply to this district, not a specific project right now, but we do know there's a project that's being discussed. And so understanding what the impacts of these changes would have, not just to this property, but to others in the district. I've heard have a lot of questions and concerns that have come into our office about what those impacts might be. We do know that based on the performance standards, there is an envelope, right, that will guide the amount of mass and scale, but really understanding what that looks like in the third dimension, I think would be a benefit. And use a case study so that, and if we've got a project underway, case study to make sure council understands what those impacts look like on the ground. We know there's concerns about traffic and, based on what's there today, what could be there based on all the entitlements that currently exist in the district, and then what is potentially being proposed here, that's warranting the change of the way we look at density and some of these other standards. And so I think we can continue to work to try to provide some more information related to those key items. I think a traffic assessment, because I know when this comes forward, where I have to go through this process with Planning Commission about major project review and back to Town Council, I'd like to know kind of what the traffic assessment is. We know what happened with USCB when, as part of that TIF project to replace the old office, underperforming office space, and the concern about traffic generation, and it was going to overwhelm that area. So I know that those questions are going to come up with traffic assessment, sort of understanding in 3D what the mass and scale items would be, the intensity of the site, what the impacts of the use would be, understanding that shared parking agreement and the implications it would have on running with the land, if it's a shared parking agreement with another private versus a public entity, and what that would be. So I would like to have the council consider requesting this information so that we can bring back more information related to those key items for consideration, and work with the applicant in the next 30 days to really develop it. There's a lot of what's being proposed in the project that I really like, and I think it's creative, and I want to make sure that we are promoting investment. I know that there's a lot of entitlements that currently are within the Sea Pine Circle District that I would not like to see happen on this site. And so I just want to make sure that if we're making decisions, and what district planning does, right, is really decisions and framework to guide public and private investment in infrastructure and then in capital, to make sure we have that information so that you're making the right decision. Because we won't be able to complete a full district assessment, but I think really understanding the impacts for these key items would be of benefit before decision making, and we're committed to make that assessment very quickly with the applicant.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, questions of staff while Nicole?
I would suggest that we hear from the applicant and then pose our questions. We may gain more education.
Well, I'm going to ask a question now just so that I understand a definition, and I wondered whether or not there might be something like that of others.
I do have just a quick question. Thank you, Mr. Cullen, for coming up here again. And Ms. Lewick, if you could go like just the bullet points of the staff recommendations on this. So I recall the height, you're not encouraging height, and you're encouraging an expansion of the proximity to a use to 1,000 feet, and tying back to the workforce housing definition regarding density, so there'd be some sort of limit on density. And I can't remember what else is in the staff recommendation. Those are the kind of bullets I wanted to hear.
Sure. I think you got all of them, but there also was the use type provision for the percent of dormitory use.
Yeah, the one I asked you about, which I completely forgot right away, so thank you.
My question is group living, and the way you said it, group living dormitory, and are those two the same kind of use, or what distinguishes one from the other?
Actually, the group living definition is quite lengthy. It's a whole paragraph, and dormitory use is just one component of group living. And so as proposed, it's only the portion of the group living definition that pertains to allowance of dormitories.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Sure. Are you going to make a presentation also, Alan?
Yeah, I think this is kind of separate in terms of dwelling unit.
All right. Why don't you come up?
May I just follow up on what you just said? So the group living, dormitory is a segment within group living.
Yes.
And this proposal speaks to just dormitory. Does that necessarily then exclude all other aspects of that bigger definition? Don't have to answer me now. But
That's the
Just to
intent
get
of
it.
how it's written. But yes, we can certainly look into that and make sure that it doesn't include the rest of group living definition.
just want to, yeah, thank you. Okay. All right.
Okay. Alan, please.
I was looking at the same definition as you asked the question. Alan Wolf. Earlier today, you were talking about cleaning up the LMO as a high priority. And there's a significant loophole in the LMO that has been used before on the island to create group living without fitting into the LMO. That is that a dwelling unit as defined includes living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation availability. This property, as the applicant will talk to, it could have 54 units with no limitation on how many beds you could put in it. And similar applicants in the past have put 8 or 10 beds behind them, which creates 400 or 500 beds. That is the wrong use for most of the island, and certainly this spot, in my opinion. So I would hope that when you look at the LMO revision priorities, this term of unlimited density is a misnomer. We already have unlimited density. We can put as many beds as we want without getting caught by the LMO and preventing it. So the unlimited density, in this case, being protected by the development form standards of buffer, setbacks, height restrictions, et cetera, is a far better use of the town LMO, I believe, than allowing unlimited beds within a single room, behind one door that just has eating, sleeping, facility, sanitation. So I would hope that we would revisit the dwelling unit definition as part of your priorities.
Thank you, Alan.
Thanks.
Appreciate that. Okay. Presentation by the applicant.
Hi, I'm Lewis Hammett here for the applicant. We have several members that are going to talk about some detail, but I was asked to say a couple of things up front. When there'd been some question raised as to whether there was any spot zoning applications, to this or worries, my opinion, there's absolutely not. Usually spot zoning is classically applied when there's one piece of property that's zoned. Here we have 4 as part of this proposal. But more importantly, spot zoning refers to when zoning is put in a place that totally conflicts with surrounding uses and makes no planning sense. Typically, many of them are like if a council rezones it so the mayor's brother-in-law can put a store in a residential neighborhood, that's the kind of thing you've usually seen. But there's nothing about this that goes in that direction. Plus, a wide variety of mixed uses and multifamilies are already allowed. And the fact that we're next to the university suggests that adding the dormitory use, it makes good planning sense. So I don't think we have any traffic zoning problem. Also, I just want to point out, most of you know, I guess at least one of you knows better than others, this particular site is somewhat dilapidated. Some people would call it blighted. It's an old office complex that would get redeveloped under this plan. The square footage of office that's allowed on there now, if it was redone and filled up with businesses, would generate more traffic than this development. So even if developed the way we'd like to, it's a reduction in traffic volume, and we've had a traffic engineer look at it for that to let us know. It's a matter of just looking at traffic generation tables. We think the traffic would even be lower than the tables suggest, because we'll have people that are walking to school across the street, and we'll have people that are walking to work at nearby businesses immediately around it. But even with normal traffic generation figures, this downzones it from traffic impact, which, as we heard from others, is probably the major, in many cases, the major concern about development. This is redevelopment and it lowers traffic impact. When it comes to the unlimited density, I think Alan did a good job of explaining that we could get the number of beds or even more on this site. This is more about doing a development that makes sense and looks good and is attractive for the community and for the people that live there than shoehorning people in. We're not doing that. The site standards that have been adopted over the years by the town, open space, stormwater drainage, buffers, setbacks, all those things apply and limit what can be done. And as was pointed out by staff, you already have this in Coligny, which is right down the street. So it's not a new concept to the town. And I think it serves well because we're trying to serve a very distinct purpose with this development. It's why it's there. Our two partners in this, so to speak, are the university that needs some housing, and we've got the shared parking arrangement with them, and of course the Surge Group, which is the biggest employer, and they need places for people to live that work here. And a major focus of our thing will be arrangements with major employers, as well as our arrangement with the university. It's also, as you look at density, the fact that we've got 75 spaces off-site, makes the normal density analysis different. If we can added enough room to put 75 spaces to this property, enough acreage for 75, we're doing it shared spaces, but if we added that along with the drainage, the open space, everything that would go with that much parking, it would be a considerably larger site and the calculated density would be considerably lower. I just point that out for what it's worth. It's not unlimited because of site standards, and it's the parking standards that are off-site that allow it to appear higher. Other sites that don't have such parking arrangements off-site could not achieve what we're doing here. If they develop those arrangements, then they could, but we don't see that happening. At any rate, with all that in mind, I want to emphasize one other thing that she said. The town has identified, the need for housing that workers can live in and afford is a very, very major goal. And one of the most serious reasons you don't have it is because all of the multifamily has been converted to short-term rentals, or a substantial part of it. We are we're prohibiting short-term rentals. So just the fact that we're putting these units on the market and can't be short-term helps feed that market, helps to get us in the right direction. So anyway, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Josh Tiller, who can talk about some of the specifics of the plan, and to others who may want to say something.
Thank you, Lewis.
You want to ask me any questions or wait?
Not at this point. Welcome, Josh.
Morning. Thanks for having me. I'm Josh Tiller. I'm just a humble landscape architect with an idea that I think will help solve some of the island's problem with workforce housing and the university's problem with student housing. Let's go to full screen mode. I call Hilton Head my hometown. I was born and raised here. I lived right down the road from this site here on North Forest Beach. My parents came here in the early 70s. My dad came here to work for Ed Pinckney as a landscape architect, and he believed in the vision of Charles Frazier and wanted to work on those cool projects. So I appreciate your all's commitment to Charles Frazier's vision for Hilton Head. And I also, my first job as a kid was right down the road from here at Jody's Fine Foods, and her family early on lived above that restaurant, and later on her employees lived above that restaurant. And I say all that because the idea of mixed use, affordable housing is not an entirely new construct for this area of Hilton Head. I feel like it's appropriate. It's also going to help the university with their housing needs. Their enrollment's down for this campus, but they feel strongly that having housing here will help enrollment. And we've got Miss Eva Smith is here as well, so you can ask her any questions you might have from the university standpoint. We did get approval from Planning Commission with our proposal. I know there are a number of issues that Mrs. Lewick alluded to that came up later after that decision. We've agreed to a number of those, and I'm not going to go back through those, but there are certainly a few that we're happy to discuss today. We agreed to the definition where we had that circular definition problem. We had proposed 500 feet within. We didn't want this to, spread throughout. But if 1,000 feet opens up more opportunities to other parcels to develop, to utilize this use, we're okay with that. The cap, we're willing to discuss that issue. We're still not sure where that needs to be, if 20% is appropriate. On the height, I've got Mr. Tom Parker with the Parker Design Group here to discuss building massing and height. So if you've got questions about that, we can certainly address it. But we are willing to limit it to 4 stories. So we're not going to go beyond 4 stories, and that's what our proposed site plan includes. How does this, I guess the question is, how does this text amendment apply to the land? And I'm going to kind of walk you through our plan and how it relates, and it'll help you further understand density and what this building may look like on the site. This is the site. There's 4 parcels. It's all accessed off of Office Way. There's parcels 6, 8, 10, and 12. And then we're directly just due north of the university campus. And within walking distance, I think the 500-foot boundary is about that distance. When we get to 1,000, you capture some of these parcels out here, including Park Plaza and Cross Pope Avenue to some of these commercial areas as well. So this site is perfect for enhancing the university campus, providing students a walkable commute to classes so they're not concerned about driving from Bluffton and getting stalled on the bridge and late for class, that kind of thing. They've also got easy access to shopping, entertainment, the beach. It's certainly going to be a draw for students. This is the existing site survey. Again, this is parcel 6, 8, 10, and 12. There are existing buildings on the site, and just to clarify, I know the packet mentioned repurposing these buildings. There will be no repurposing. There's some of these buildings have some asbestos in them, so the plan is to raise these buildings and redevelop an already developed site. So we're not going into a greenfield and plowing trees down. We're actually going to protect a lot of these trees. This is Office Way here. This is, Office Park Road here. There's a heavy vegetated edge along this road. It's a little open up at this access point here. But for the most part, this whole area of the site does have trees, but it's not as treated as this buffer is here. Our site eliminates those existing buildings. And one thing to note is this area of existing tree canopy. This building, we're only required a 20-foot maximum setback from the property line. This building, the main, widest facade is about 100 feet off that property line. We get the closest here, we're about 25, 30 feet along this edge here, but we exceed the required setback. This building occupies, it's got 132 total units. And that includes the dormitory, which the university's committed to. We've got a restaurant facility here that'll occupy 2 stories. It's a 1-story. The restaurant occupies 1 story, but there will be living above that. But it's a total of 2 stories in height on the inside. Circulation, we've moved. Currently, there's 2 access points here and here. We've reduced that down to 1 access point on Office Way, and we're proposing a new one here off of Office Park Road, so that you pretty much loop through the site. We've also got 75 parking spaces the university's willing to share with us as part of this, because we anticipate most of their students will be either in these dorms or renting rooms here. So it's been talked about the density. It's not really unlimited when you factor in buffers, setbacks, stormwater requirements, parking. That tends to paint you into a corner with the amount of density you can get on the site, because as you increase density, you increase parking demands, stormwater demands, so you get to a point where you can't go beyond a certain level of density. And it's tough to come up with a number to apply to an entire text amendment for an area, for a zoning district here. I know there has been some questions about building height. We're limited to 45. We're asking for 55. And I've got a couple slides here of the streetscape.
I'm sorry, can you go back to the one?
I will go back. I just wanted to show you this tree canopy. This is that existing tree canopy I talked about earlier. So those buildings will sit back in here, far beyond that tree canopy there. This is, if you had your back to Pope Avenue looking in, or no, actually, yes, correct, that's correct. This is the intersection of Office Park Road. So this is that corner right here, this corner that we're looking at in that image. So you can again see that large canopy and large buffer of trees that this building will be nestled behind. And I'd be happy to let Tom talk about that building.
Mr. Chairman, committee, my name is Tom Parker. I'm just a humble architect, a longtime island resident, 39 years, and our firm is doing everything we can to try to get one of these kind of projects approved, and we feel that this is just a perfect location for it. By right, this is a 45-foot requirement in that area. And as you can, this is a graphic. It has nothing to do. Our building is not designed yet. This is a 4-story building with a roof on it that we've shown, and it's just for the discussion of what the extra height would allow people to do. So at 45 feet, we can put 4 typical stories in and put a roof on it. And that's the drawing on the left-hand side. You can see once you put in your floor-to-floor heights for 4 stories, you end up with 6 to 8 feet of ability to create a roof above that 4th floor. And we end up with a datum line that doesn't allow any play in the roof massing per se. There's a little bit of tweaking we could do down in front of windows and that sort of thing, but you are hard to that upper line. So you end up with a parapet that is flat across, and you can throw in a gable or 2 like what's shown here, but you can't go above that line if you only have 6 to 8 feet to work with. So we have a project that was recently approved that has a roof very similar to this, just kind of goes straight across. The extra 10 feet, if the verbiage were limiting it to 4 floors, because 55 feet, you obviously could add a floor. If you limited it to 4 floors, the 55 feet allows the roof massing to create a hierarchy from the lower roofs to upper roofs, and allows a roof form to be created. And Hilton Head architecture was based in creating roofs. It's a roof type architecture. People can't really define what Hilton Head architecture is. We've argued about it over the years, but everybody agrees that it has a lot to do with the roof form. And the extra height, if we limit it to 4 floors, the extra height, it can be contributed into the roof architecture. And the roof architecture helps break down the scale of the building. When you look at these roofs, they're sloping, you have to remember they're sloping away from you. So while the building's higher, it doesn't necessarily feel higher in the field. A 45-foot building, a 45-foot building with a straight flat roof, and a 55-foot building, if they're not right next to each other, may feel very similar from a massing standpoint. And that's where the idea of the extra height is coming in, and limiting it to 4 floors so that there's no ability for somebody to come in and add another floor and have this low slope, flat roof look, because that's exactly what would happen if you didn't limit it to 4 floors. Do you have any questions? Comments?
Mr. Chair, if I may ask a few questions. I would turn around and look at the screen. I was trying to read the height of each floor. Is it 10 foot on each? And I realize this is not your plan at this point, but the drawings that you're showing us, is each floor 10 feet?
Yes, ma'am. This is a 10-foot floor-to-floor with a 1'2" structure.
Okay.
So it's getting down to close to, the 8-foot height on the inside for ceilings, which in the modern world is not really market rate. Yeah. People wouldn't be happy with a low ceiling like that, but it's very, very typical in modern construction.
And what's the slope on those 2 sketches of the roof?
This is 8 and 12.
8-12 in both of them?
I'm sorry?
8-12 in both of them?
It's the same.
Okay.
It's the exact same thing. If you look at the gable end and the beginning of the hip roof on the drawing on the left-hand side, that's the exact same drawing, but it has a roof added, a hip roof continuing on up. Mm-hmm. And when you create a hierarchy of massing, it really does help break down that scale.
Okay, all right. And the other question is, we were shown some, I call them fisheye, the wide-angle views of the tree canopy. And I'll disclose, I used to live in South Forest Beach. I used to walk to CVS. I used to walk to Park Plaza Theater. Used to walk to eat there. And walk. I'm saying walk, not bike. I bike there too. So the tree canopy there seems to be very impressive. So my question is, what is the average height of that tree canopy along Office Park?
Those oak trees that are 24 to 36-inch oaks along the front, they've got to be 50 feet tall.
Yeah, at maturity, they can get up to 60.
Yeah, we don't know the answer to that question, but yeah.
Because I'm very concerned, folks have heard me talk about this before, about the mass and scale, density, and height of buildings. As I understand it, the preference on the island is to maintain height at or below the tree canopy. So, okay.
Yeah, and if we were to go forward with an actual project, we would plot those trees and actually show them for the committees to look at.
Okay, thank you.
To determine if that's the case.
Right, question?
Thank you. Oh.
I still got a couple more things.
Yeah, okay.
You can both stand there for the moment,
Okay.
because we might have questions of both of you.
I think Josh has some more presentation to give.
Yeah, there's been some statements made in the press that there's concerns that they're not providing housing for families. We do have some 3-bedroom units that are part of this. We've also got a lot of support, not only from the university and the Surge Group, but there are other of the service-related businesses on the island that have provided support letters and commitments to providing some, or utilizing some of this housing. And I'd like to share with you all those.
Please leave those with Zendaya if you would.
Okay. And I was just trying to hit on all the points so we don't miss anything with the staff's comments. There is a component they've asked about the affordable workforce housing, tying it to the rent index, and Alan Wolf is here to discuss that. If you'd like to, we'd like to keep that as kind of an open discussion. But that being said, I think that's about all we've got. So,
I have a couple of questions, but first, do you want to ask anything of them specifically to the design or whatever?
Sorry, wanted just to mention some of the stuff on the traffic. Yeah, I'm Dylan Turner. I need to grab my phone real quick because I have something on there too to present. But Dylan Turner with Kimley Horn, traffic engineer.
That's fine.
While you're doing that, can I just ask a question in terms of the layout that you had shown with the various buildings and how the site plan looked? Yeah. Maybe, which of those buildings are not planned to be 55 feet tall?
The dormitories.
So the ones in the floor, okay. But everything else?
That's this building
Yeah,
here.
right.
And that's the one that's closest to Pope.
Mhm.
And that's where you see the smallest amount of buffer. That building would sit in here, but our plan is to close this access point and replant that area.
What is the height of that building?
Two-story building, it's probably
The
30.
dormitory building or the
Correct.
existing?
No, the dormitory building.
Oh, the dormitory
Yeah.
building? Potentially 45 feet.
Thank you.
This is where that area would be planted.
Thank you.
What will be done about the ditch? What are your plans? Just, this isn't material, but I was just curious what your attitude is towards the ditch.
And are you referring to this one
Yeah,
here?
right. In other words, what's your drainage plan at this point?
We haven't engaged a civil engineer yet, but this would, more or less, we'd like to protect it because anything we do to it, it's going to impact those trees. So we'd like to avoid it. And that's why we placed this building so far back.
So your drainage is going in a different direction?
Oops. Well, we're showing pervious parking areas, so there might be some underground storage. We've also got some surface areas for infiltration as well.
I noticed in that drawing, Riley's Plaza right next door. What interconnections are you anticipating? Pedestrian pathways? Have you had conversations with Riley's Plaza about what they might like to do jointly? What's going on there?
We haven't had any formal discussions. We're certainly open to connecting there from especially a pedestrian standpoint. We're also showing an access here at this point as well. But if they're willing to work with us, we'd be happy to connect, provide some interconnectivity.
You've answered my question about the height of the dormitory, but what the restaurant building is going to be the same height as the others?
So the restaurant building is the plinth of the 2
Yeah,
stories
right.
of residential. So we have a restaurant building that's 2 stories and 2 stories of residential.
So basically the same height as the other, okay, good.
It's just commercial at the bottom instead of residential.
Okay. Any other physical design questions of the design team? Incidentally, I'll say I've dealt with both of these firms in the past. They're a quality firm. Both of them are quality designers. I'll make some other comments later on about that, though.
Hopefully all positive, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to speak briefly on traffic. So we've done a preliminary traffic analysis, assuming that this is the site plan we're going to move forward with. Once again, Dylan Turner with Kimley Horn. The first thing that we did was we did a memo that looked at, hey, if we develop the office buildings that are there compared to this, what happens? So currently, the vacant office buildings are about 170,000 total square feet. And our plan had 5,600 square feet of the restaurant space, 160 low-rise multifamily. And low-rise is typically 3 stories or less, but it also is a higher traffic generator than mid-rise. So we wanted to be more conservative with the trips on the network. So use a little bit of a higher trip generation, even though this could be mid-rise according to the definitions. And then 16 dwelling units of off-campus student housing. And the result of that, if we compare what the office buildings there today versus this proposed plan, is about 179 less AM peak hour trips and 142 less PM peak hour trips. So then we did a TIA, just so that we know, we're informed. Once again, assuming we go forward with this plan, once this plan goes forward, we'll turn it in to DOT, because it exceeds their threshold, and we'll turn it into the town as well. But just to give you an idea, we studied the roundabout, we studied Office Way at Pope Avenue. So Office Way, as it goes over, it's a right in, right out. We studied Pope Avenue at Orleans Road, or New Orleans Road. And then we did our Office Park at Greenwood and Office Park at Office Way. A lot of office. And we found that really the site has no impact on our off-sites. We wouldn't be recommending any off-site improvements. Obviously, that'd have to go forward to the town of Hilton Head. We used the land management ordinance to compare the results to make sure we weren't exceeding any thresholds there. So all in all, this site doesn't have major impacts on the road network, and we would turn that in to DOT and the town of Hilton Head for review as well, assuming this is the plan that we go forward with. So,
Just for my own education, how do you calculate impacts of units? Is it on a square footage basis or a unit
it's on
type?
the number of dwelling units. So we would look at the number of each individual dwelling unit. So the unit, it could have 1 bedroom to 3 bedrooms. So they do a survey of apartments all over the U.S. And they is the ITE, so Institute of Transportation Engineers. And they average out all this data to then create a formula for us to plug in the dwelling unit to. And then it says, here's the anticipated number of trips that you would have coming in and out of that site daily in the AM, PM, and a few other that we typically don't look at, which is a generator.
Has staff seen that report?
Staff has not seen this yet. We didn't want to turn this in until we, if this is the plan that we're going to go forward, but I can send it over to staff too if they want to see what our draft.
We do have a chicken or egg situation here.
A little bit, yeah. Yep.
Do you have any questions of Dylan?
So how many dwelling units are there in the dormitory building?
16.
With an anticipated 64 heads on beds there, correct?
Yeah.
That's what I recall. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
I have a question of Alan. I've heard Surge Group referred to as a partner in this before. Can you just define and describe for us the nature of that partnership?
We've been at this workforce housing discussion for going on 8 years now, and this is the first time that we've drummed up amongst our 38 local partners a significant amount of money to try and be a partner in bringing one of these products to market.
Is Surge Group contributing to this project?
Yes.
Is Surge Group agreeing to lease a certain number of the units, and if so, for what period of time?
We will absolutely do so. We do not have that agreement in place. We've got interest from more than enough hotels to fill the space. This isn't a Surge Group project entirely by any means. This is meant for the wider workforce.
Understood.
So we'll be happy to step in as much as we can. Typically, we've not been in the guarantee of lease because it's just been a chicken and egg, as Mr. Ames pointed out. So we'd probably be interested in 10 or 20% of the units would be my guess, just on unit count. And that's of the 116. I'm seeing 16 are already separated for dorms.
A lot of the support for this project comes from providing housing for students, but also for, I guess we would say, hourly workers or workers who are dependent on gratuities and so forth. And so I need to see a quantification of how many of those types of employees will actually be served here. And so before I would be prepared to vote in this, I need to see a commitment from a number of businesses to, in fact, do master leases on this, because that means it's going to be locked in for the purposes intended.
Sure.
And I'm not implying in that there is any smoke and mirrors here, but I do need to have that confirmation in order to move it forward. So thank you. You've answered the question. You're definitely interested. You're making some contribution, but you have no commitment, legal commitment at this point to lease any unit.
No, it would just be a very sound business interest on our part.
Understood.
Yeah.
All right.
Glenn, just to help ease your concern, these letters of support also state the number of units that they're interested in.
That'll be very educational to me, Josh. Thank you. I look forward to that.
Did you want Josh?
Mr. Chairman, I have some other comments to make whenever you feel is appropriate.
I just want to follow along with that train of thought and thinking about the return on investment that obviously is driving the bottom line on all of this and how that would translate to anticipated rental costs. Because I think that has been a part of the concern and discussion. While there's a commitment, I understand, for a number of different business entities to lease these out, I want to make sure that when rented out, they're actually affordable to those they're renting them out to. And so I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
I would like to go back to the chicken and the egg. We're proposing a support for an LMO text amendment primarily that we think helps this entire region. This property would certainly qualify for it. We've not taken the steps to get to the point of putting together any sort of pro forma that could answer that question affirmatively at this point. If we get that inclination and you want us to spend the next 30 days focusing on that, be happy to do so, but we're not there at this moment.
I would ask for that.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I respond to Mr. Stafford? Just one point about your income levels. As we approach that for this project, I would probably look at the housing needs assessment that Beaufort County completed 5 years ago now. We've hit our halfway point when we were supposed to have introduced 1,600 rental units to the market for Hilton Head. And we have another 700 to go in the next 5 years. And unfortunately, thanks to our short-term rental problem, we have lost water out of the bucket. So we're losing ground. So when we stand here and promote this use for this area, there's a wonderful blend between some of the items that you focused on, Ms. Bryson, which are people can work where they live. And that's a priority that really the south end of Hilton Head has an exclusive on if we develop this appropriately. So this is a tremendous use along with the dormitory tie-in that we could accomplish. So my hope would be a positive recommendation to Town Council on the construct of the text amendment as it applies to these parcels in the area for redevelopment of the existing dilapidated office building. And it would create Islander housing. Yeah, the name of it, that's going to improve the quality of life for all of us. And that's been the drum that I've beat since even before Ms. Becker joined the council. Mr. Ames is here. We drum on forever. Quality of life is availability of services, cost of services, and quality of services. And we are woefully becoming short in all those three areas. This stride will be a very nice step in the right direction towards that for all the island residents. Best part, no short-term rentals on this one.
Thank you, Alan.
Yep.
We will have a time for public comment. Glenn, would you like to lead off on your general comments?
I think we have some more folks.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Welcome, USCB.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Hello. I'm a little nervous, although I speak to big, huge classrooms of students. The four of you intimidate me.
We don't bite.
It's okay. I'm Dr. Eva Smith, and I'm the brand-new chair of the Hospitality Management Program at USCB. And our program, of course, is housed over here on gorgeous, right off of Pope Avenue. And yes, there has been an enrollment decline. As most people use as an excuse, ours is actually pretty legit in that the pandemic played havoc with our enrollment. However, the number one reason that students come to USCB to study hospitality management is to work here and to live here and to learn here. Because it's the it's the perfect resort area, it's the perfect classroom all the way around. It's got everything you could offer. So when our students come to USCB, they want to live here. And that's a deterrent when they can't live here. The commute is a deterrent. I don't mind the commute. I think it's a beautiful drive. I live in Bluffton, and of course, I've only lived in this area for several months, but I was born and raised in South Carolina in the upstate. I've lived here my entire life. My father and his family, well, that would be us, lived in Myrtle Beach for 30 years. So the Low Country has that mystique. We have the opportunity and the university's support to market and sell our program. They want this program to grow. It needs to grow. It has every growth potential. The only little thing that holds it back is the inability to house our students close to their classroom. So this is really a win-win scenario, in my opinion, of course, in my humble opinion, because we have not only are our students coming here to learn, but they are this workforce development. They are working. Almost all of the students that come to class go to work from there, and they're working on the island, and they're fulfilling those hourly jobs, those hourly waged positions. So, you're not only providing, I understand how the word dormitory kind of can have a pejorative meaning, but it's really more of providing students a place to live while they learn and work. It's just a fantastic opportunity all the way around. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have that I'm available to answer. The financial executive chancellor, she was not able to come today because she had car trouble. And I think we all had car trouble getting here, but that's okay, we're here now. So is there something I can address for you?
Perhaps. Tammy, any
Great.
questions?
Sure. Thank you, first of all, and welcome.
Thank you.
Just general numbers in terms of how the USCB campus is functioning here on the island. Anticipated number of full enrollment.
Okay. So in the heyday, so to speak, we had close to 200 students. Mm-hmm. That number is considered, marginal when it comes to programs that are specifically directed in hospitality management. Currently, we have 98 students enrolled. Half of those are juniors and seniors, which have class here on the island. The freshmen and sophomores generally take all of their courses in Bluffton because those are their general education requirements. So that's the English, the math, the science, that kind of stuff, history. We don't want any of that out here. No, I'm teasing. We want to keep it to the cool stuff, right? So we have about 50 students that are coming on and off the campus right now, and some are perfectly fine with a commute. They carpool. They all come at one time and then go back to Bluffton in one car and leaving cars here. They bicycle to their work, to their jobs. They walk to their jobs. They're pretty savvy when it comes to that. There's room for more. That building is not at capacity, and it needs to be. And
Is there tracking of how many of those students are actually working and employed when they're not in class on Hilton Head?
I would, how many are living on the island?
No, just working.
Oh, just working. Mm-hmm. If I went right now and took a survey, I would say 75%. I know there are a good number of student athletes that can only come like 2 days a week because they have practices and whatnot, and it's to their benefit to live in Bluffton. Mm-hmm. And they make special trips out here for us for their passion. These kids have a heart for service, that they want to be here, they want to work here. It's just not always.
And the class offerings currently at USCB, what does that schedule look like that are relevant to those maybe juniors and seniors, and are there any for the lower classmen?
So as the maker of the schedule, so I get to create the schedule, that's very flexible. However, at this current time, we offer courses Monday through Thursday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And they're like Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, 75-minute courses. And so they generally meet with 3 different professors. We have a quantity food production course going now that only meets on Mondays, but it's a 4-hour course where they're cooking for 50 people. And then the remaining students, faculty, and staff that are in the building, we get to eat lunch, eat what they prepare.
Thank you for those general questions about how the university is functioning here. What I would ask, and maybe we'd get an opportunity in the very near future, I'd love to come over and see how things are happening there now.
Would love that.
Next question I have relevant to this project is, in terms of a housing dormitory for students taking classes here at our campus, USCB campus, how does this fit into the bigger scope of housing available in terms of what the cost might be to a student?
I'm hesitant to talk to cost, because I know that those discussions have taken place outside of my purview.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an academic, so I'm not a budgeting person. However, I do know that our housing that we offer our students in Bluffton and in Beaufort are top in the nation. That's one of our selling points, is that we have these fantastic dorms. I lived in one for 6 months. Now, I was ready to get out because I had the soccer coach and his entire family over my head. And, I'm too old for that. But that's beside the point. It's a beautiful dorm. We have, our students seem to be very happy there. They have very few disruptions in terms of lots of, stuff that college kids can get into.
So I guess the relevant point is, I would go back to what the 30-day request is. I'd like to know what it is is there a different scale for the dormitory, how that fits into financial aid, and how the budgeting for a college education works. Because obviously, if this dormitory building is meant for those 64 students who would be able to take advantage of it, I want to make sure that plays correctly. All right.
Well, it would be part of their tuition. I would not think that there would be a significant increase or decrease. I think it would be straight in line with what the university charges for housing. And
I just would love to see that analysis. Thank you.
Sure. And also with room and board is a food plan, which they would not have here, unless there was some kind of deal with the restaurant.
They could eat at Surge all the time.
Yeah.
At Riley's.
Yes, I was going to say, I don't want to speak for the Surge group, but what else can I help you with?
Questions of Dr. Smith?
You may not be able to speak to this, but one of the concerns that I have is whether or not the parking easement is a permanent easement. If there were to be some change in the use of the building by USCB, would these new buildings and their residents still be able to park there? And so it's a question of, is it a permanent easement? And if you don't know, it's fine to say you don't know.
I don't know, but I would hate to think about this building being used for anything but the academic. Now, of course, it's used for conference and convention space, some now, but in terms of us not being there as an educational opportunity, I shiver to even think about that.
I can assure you the town feels exactly the same way.
Yeah, I mean, we want it to grow.
There are changes that go on.
Of course.
Are there vacancies in the dormitories in Bluffton?
Very few. Very, very few. There are, and I know that and the only reason I know this is because the housing person who does this walks my dog. And she told me that they're going to put several dorms, going to make them go dark so that they can update them. Some of them are 20 years old, so they're going to, work on those in terms of some structural issues and some, AC, that kind of thing. Beaufort is packed. The Beaufort campus, there are no vacancies at all. They're dying for something over there. And I'm thinking, we need to have that same problem.
Sure. You mentioned that there are about 98 students in the hospitality program.
Yes.
Are many of those students studying online rather than being live in the classroom?
No, no. I love online education, and there's definitely a place for online learning. I get it. I was developing online courses back in 2000 when it wasn't cool to be online. However, hospitality and teaching people about service, teaching people about dealing with people, those kind of people skills is hard to do in an online modality. So yes, we have students that are in hospitality through the Palmetto College, which is our agreement with the mothership, USC in Columbia. And we get 15, 20 students, but they're not considered in this number. What I would love to do is have those students do internships on the island in the summer, and then we could house them either in Bluffton, or should we be fortunate enough to have this housing, they could
So those
do
online
that.
students are not counted in the 98 that you said are in the program
No,
now?
sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to try to shackle the four of us to briefer comments. Curious minds want to know and ask questions.
Do you need me?
Thank you very much, Dr. Smith.
You should say, yes, we need you, but we don't have to say anything else to say.
All right. What I'd like to do is move on to sort of final comments by the Public Planning Committee. Tammy, would you like to lead off?
Sure. So probably not unexpected, in addition to the questions that I have in terms of how this really fills a need for workforce without it being clearly stated as an offering. And so we know that's a problem for me. I love I should probably start with positives. I love the idea of redevelopment on the island. These buildings, these areas that have not been continually used or blighted, this type of work needs to be done. So I welcome that. I would love to hear the analysis of the traffic impact study that y'all did, and then see where we might need to or want to look further on our own. And that's not to say that yours isn't wonderful. We are just in a position across the island. We're taking that extra step and looking at things from our own is starting to make sense. There is something I can't get past, and I'm going to try to make it as, there's one thing that I can't get past, and this won't be a surprise to anyone in the room. The move from a 45-foot tall building to 55-foot tall. And granted, the roof line does look much nicer. But if you want a nice roof line, make a smaller building and build it. I will not encourage or vote for anything that raises the height on the island. We've seen those examples that were provided on the slides when staff made their presentation, that it is not within the character of the island, it doesn't belong here, and we should stop that practice, period. And so I know that others will probably pick up on some of the things that I have on my list of concerns, but that is a non-starter. If no one does pick up on those things, I'll stop short so that others get their opportunity. But if they don't, I'm asking to be able to revisit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks to the staff and the applicant for all the information today. And I did sit on, I think it was a planning commission meeting where I looked at this project before and appreciate some of the additional information and some of the revisions. Generally, I like it. I just tell you that because of the following. I like that it addresses workforce. I like that there are partnerships involved, Surge, USCB. I like that it favors mixed use. I like that it's a walkable community. When I look at workforce housing, I think of our nodes around the island, and that is where are the commercial nodes where folks could live and work. And I'm really heartened to hear Mr. Cullen talk about district zoning concept, because I'm holding up the Mid-Island District and looking at the kind of requirements for mixed use within there. It also has height limitations and also density limitations. So I like some of the concepts in here, and I think that's what I hear staff saying is that perhaps we could make some tweaks to this idea in line with some sort of district idea, because well, let me go through the rest of my likes. I join Ms. Becker in talking about redevelopment of space. We have commercial and office space on the island that we'd like to see reused or redeveloped, whatever the term is. I like shared parking. I like that there's less impervious space and respect of the existing tree canopy and other landscaping on the site. So I like that, Mr. Simple Landscape Architect. The concerns that I have is that this is kind of a one-off, if you will. You know, it is great for this area. I do like that. As I said, I used to live in this area. I loved walking down there. It was what I considered part of my large walkable community. But what I would like for us to look at is, could this be something that would not only be used within the Sea Pines district, but could be replicated other places? So proximity to other kind of uses, here it's an education use. Maybe there are other places on the island where it would fit for education uses being nearby, because we do have a need for workforce housing for our teachers. Also hospital area, and any other kind of area, any other kind of uses like that. So expand it beyond education use so it could be replicated. I do like having density control. You've heard me say that I have a great concern about the mass and scale and height and density of buildings, so I want us to do something about that. And then also tying to the definition, as the staff had recommended, of workforce housing and the percentage. Also, as I said, I like shared parking. Mr. Stanford asked about, is there a parking easement that would be provided, but some sort of, I think anytime we have shared parking, which as I said, I do encourage, that a tie to sort of a fallback plan. What if the shared parking agreement falls apart, then how would that use still comply with the parking requirements? So some sort of fallback, whatever that might be. The height, I join Ms. Becker. I do not like the height increase. I think, and I appreciate the simple architect describing, that's why I asked about the slope, because what I'd heard before was a flat roof, which I don't particularly like. But I think building designs, there's a number of things on the facade that could improve the appearance and still stay within the height. I appreciate that there's no more dwelling space within the extra 10 feet, but I've seen some massive roofs. I'm not an architect, so I can't talk about what the appropriate design on the island is, defer that to other folks. But I think there's other ways to address the architectural feel of the building rather than increasing by 10 feet. So I would not appreciate that. Those, I think, are my list of concerns at this point. I'd like to see more worked on it.
Thank you. Good comments, Ms. Beck.
Thank you.
One of the B's.
Yeah.
I have some comments, and then we need to have a public hearing on this, and then I'll have a motion that I would like to present,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. I think this is a creative idea, and I salute you for being creative about it. We are concerned about major priorities of the town, and it's difficult to get those two things to merge together. So I would say that mixed use is something that we need more of on this island, and this is a way to promote mixed use. So I salute you for that. I see this being dependent on the continued use of the adjacent building by USCB. I expressed a moment ago a concern about the nature of the parking easement. It needs to be a permanent easement in order for this to actually work. I've had discussions with the developer here about workforce housing. We need to have a commitment as to the amount of workforce housing and how that would be defined in order for this to move forward. We have stated that it's a priority in multifamily developments that there be some, hopefully more, workforce housing availability there. So I look for that coming forward as we're going forward. I'll be honest in saying I do not understand undefined density in a land use. It misses something in me. So I need some education in that. I too am concerned about 55 feet. So we need to see what a building would look like in order for us to be able to move it forward and approve it. I understand that you have left some letters with us from employers. It is going to be vital and indispensable to me to see a major commitment from employers to lease on a long-term basis a significant portion of these units. If those various conditions can be met, I'll be looking at it with an open mind. But those are things that need to be resolved from my point of view. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Glenn. Mr. Despain and I started talking about this a year ago or so. It's a slow process. I think that I said to Mr. Despain in our first meeting, if it's workforce housing, I'm going to bend over backwards to make it work. I'm not at a point to say that I perceive this as workforce housing unless there's some underlying guarantees, business subsidies, whatever, that bring it into sort of my concept of what workforce housing is. However, because we have been working on this island in a public-private partnership, I have learned that some of the salaries that people are getting paid today would in fact be able to afford something higher than I would have anticipated a year ago. So I can learn about that, and I think that's going to be something important for council to consider. When council looks at a zoning, this isn't rezoning, this is an add-on, but I'm going to call a zoning issue. It is responsible for asking the question, is this in alignment with the broader community vision or goals? Are there unintended risks? And it really is up to us to ask the questions about that. And then sort of at the political sentiments. And I think all three of those are in play in this particular situation. I challenge the premise of this being tied, the premise is that USCB is crucial to this moving forward because it is tied in the language of the amendment that it has to be within 500 feet or 1,000 feet of an educational facility. And I go along with what Glenn is at least hypothesizing, and that is risk. What if USCB isn't there? What happens to other pieces of ground? Does that disallow any future development and so on? So I think the premise is challengeable, but I do agree that the location makes sense for housing for all the variety of reasons that these two competent professionals have cited. I am going to object to USCB's parking lot being used as shared parking on the basis it's a public facility that, if, sad to say, the university made the decision not to continue using that facility, it would be a facility that the town would own. And I don't think it is wise for this council to jeopardize the ultimate use or flexibility of that campus by participating in a shared parking arrangement on that property. I'm not against shared parking for the reasons that Ms. Bryson mentioned, but on a public facility that the town could conceivably take on, I'm saying that's bad, would be a bad practice. We've spoken about height. We've talked about workforce component. 500 feet or 1,000 feet. I look at the map that was put up there and I see 500 feet, and I respectfully disagree with Mr. Hammett. It smells, it looks like spot zoning to me. Now, I'm not going to challenge it, but there's something about 500 feet, and you see that circle. Who is it benefiting? You make it out to 1,000 feet, and you've complicated it for another reason, and that is the unintended risk of other developers not retaining the responsible professionals you have. But we have seen it in other places on this island where we intended something to happen in our LMO and it didn't happen. And we need to anticipate that unintended risk. So the 1,000 feet is something that I'm leery of. The 500 feet is a different matter. I said chicken and egg. We are talking about a text amendment, and we have seen a site plan that cites or emphasizes quality design, sensitive planning, and so on and so forth. There's no guarantee that I can accept today that the next developer trying to take advantage of this text amendment will do the same thing. We need time in this community to understand what our vision of a district is. And although I am conceptually in agreement that housing could belong here, I'm not at the point that the other aspects of this project make sense. I'll try to end up here, but several years ago, there was master planning done on the island in several different places. And this was an area that was master planned, and it showed an incredible amount of interconnectivity between parcels of ground in this area. I don't see it in this plan, and I know you're not at that point, but I'm sensitive to that going forward. So these are things that are on my mind, and I am hopeful and optimistic that by taking a little bit of time, we can get closer. I do not like the feeling of trying to put a square peg in a round hole. I think we can round out the squareness to get to a place where it makes sense both for the developer and the community. Is there a
we make
excuse
public
me.
comment.
Yeah, but make the motion first and then have the public comment, please.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the Public Planning Committee defer action until additional information relating to the massing and scale, assessment of traffic, parking, intensity of use, including a 3D model or elevations coordinated through staff, and the applicant be brought back for consideration in a 30-day time frame.
Is there a second?
I would just like to add to that wonderful motion, the request that I had with regard to the expected cost of units and affordability to those that the intended user is.
I'll accept that amendment.
Thank you.
Okay. There's been a motion, public comment now. Mr. Babel, I saw his hand first.
He's taller than you are, Gray.
First of all,
I am, as a citizen, in favor of this concept of combining something for USCB, something for affordable housing, and something for the workforce. And the second reason I'm in favor of it is we have two solid, local, trusting organizations that are working on this, Josh and his folks and the Surge Group. But I want to just, for a moment, talk about safety. The parking problem is not going to be a problem, because if it's like anything on Cadillo Parkway, it's going to be on bicycles. And in 10 years, they're all going to be on e-bikes. These people go to work in the morning when it's dark, and they come back often at night. Think about that area when you go through it. It's very dark. And I watch people going on Office Way, and they look at traffic coming out a circle. They cut in front of traffic, cut across the median, and they cut through people going onto the circle. That's the way they're going to get out of there, okay? So it's an island, and so we have to take a look at the flow of traffic for these souls getting out of there so they can safely get to and from work. And later on in the day, there's going to be alcohol involved, you know? And they're going to be, that's a windy road through there, windy road and line of sight issues when you get past Office Park Road, getting in there. So I think somebody needs to sit down with these folks and take care of that. The second thing but it's going to alleviate the problem of parking, because I don't think you'll need as many car parking spots as that. The second thing I would ask that you consider, and I think it's important that we do this before we do this, because we normally approve these things. It's built and we say, what are we going to do with the bikes now? You know? And then we have to build a pathway, and it takes 3 years. So I would like to see something done and planned as a part of this deal. The second thing is how the thing looks. What typically happens is people have bikes, so they put bike racks up. And look, fast forward another 6 months, 8 months, we have bikes strewn all over the place. I would recommend you put sheds in and make that be a part of the project, or put them inside the facility. You know, people will go by there or on their way, they're tourists. We don't want a bunch of bikes strewn all over a place. I think it'd enhance the property to put them in sheds, the things that are similar in Lighthouse Road and Sea Pines, something like that, or put them inside, like Amsterdam, okay? This isn't Amsterdam, but something that would look more attractive. It would not send a signal to our tourists. Well, we got a lot of bikes, but geez, they look like hell. And I see that every morning at Cadillo Parkway, and I see it at night. These poor souls. We give them vests and everything else, but the vests disappear, and those souls are at risk. And I'm afraid there'll be a lot of people here, their lives will be at risk, and we need to take care of it before this thing gets approved, as opposed to later, after the fact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Mr. Smith?
Thank you. My name is Grace Smith. I live at 11 Weilers Creek Way on Hilton Head. And I think I'm sort of piggybacking on a concern that this gentleman had, and that is security. Dormitories are usually associated with college and university campuses. I had the privilege of going to college and living for 2 years in a dormitory, and there was campus security. And I think in this area particularly, security is going to be a factor. Unfortunately, and some people like to sweep this under the rug, but there's crime on Hilton Head Island, and a lot of that crime is situated in rather close proximity to this location. And so I would like to see some type of assurance of who's gonna pay for security. Is it gonna be the college? Is it gonna be the Surge Group hiring a security? Okay, enough said, you get the point. Okay, capacity. We just spent 2 days, and I love that workshop. But we spent a lot of recurring concerns about the capacity of this island. I just specifically referring to that, and I know nothing about this topic, but what came into my mind was what is the impact of this construction on limited groundwater and sewerage resources? Just wanted to bring that up. Continuity and support of rental. I happen to know that the restaurant and service business has about a 75% turnover rate. So somebody rents one of these units and works for Surge, and then they go work in Charleston or something like that. And they do that after 3 months, and they just say, well, tough, we're out of here. How does that unit continue to be paid for? Okay, and then I also hope that workforce housing would truly be provided, because I think we got screwed by the Gardner Road monstrosity. First of all, it's huge, and we don't need that anymore on the island. And second of all, they had promised, oh yeah, we're going to have, you know, very affordable workforce housing. And then you go there, and like the minimum is $2 to $3 grand a month. And they screwed us. They screwed the town by saying they were going to do something, and they did something else. Okay, final one. So that's just another thing to think about. The building height, mission creep. Again, we just spent 2 days, and even the start of this meeting, which I loved, hearing the recommitment to Hilton Head aesthetics, ecology, et cetera. Instead, you know, we could have mission creep here. This edifice could happen, and then down toward Caligny Plaza, there could be a reason to do another 55-foot building and another, and pretty soon, yeah. Okay. You guys get
Got
the
it.
points. Thank you.
Yes, please. Yep.
My name is Stephanie Malott.
Come on up. Address us.
Yeah, I know that's when I'll freeze, David.
No, you won't. We're all friends here. Your name, please?
My name is Stephanie Malott. I started a program 3 years ago called Hilton Head Island Stewardship Program, and I poured my heart and soul into it. Mr. Ames and I, my office was actually in the building that we're talking about. Mr. Riley, we're so happy to see you here. We have actually experienced everything that you all are talking about, and
Please,
the only thing I see that has not been
address
addressed,
us.
I'm sorry I can't, because I'll start crying if I look at you and
You can look at
The only thing that has not been addressed is my company to advocate for the actual workforce house people themselves, to make sure that Mr. Riley's or whomever's business has qualified individuals that can afford the housing. Everybody's talking about how it will impact this and the looks and the security and whatnot. It's there, and the people that want to live in these houses and the people that need these people to live in these houses, they need to be, and you put it in your LMA at the very beginning when you guys created the workforce housing project, that the workforce housing is entitled to the same luxuries and whatever.
Quality, yeah.
They are going to appreciate this. It will be a gift, and I would like to help facilitate that. I have my property managed. It's just amazing. I came here to say goodbye to you.
You headed off?
I think I might stay.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comments? Come on. A flash from the past.
Flash from the past. Town Council.
Welcome
My name
back.
is Jay Wendell. I am the general manager at the Beach House, also a resident of Hilton Head Island Plantation. Mr. Ames, as you know, we have talked about workforce housing for since you first came up here, and so it's been over 10 years. Mr. Stanford, I wanted to let you know that I can speak to my past and present looking for housing on this island for my associates. I've got, in a past life here on the island, I had 60 H-2Bs annually, was able to find housing. I had 20 J-1 associates that came from overseas to learn our culture, learn the hospitality industry that we found housing for. Those opportunities are all gone. We're building one right now for 20 beds, working on the contract as we speak for Beach House. I'm about to invest about $10 million in the backyard of Beach House. The idea is that we help make our business grow and our service levels grow there at the facility, and that is going to require me to find future housing. Typically in the past, I've done 5-year contracts, Mr. Stanford. So I can tell you that this need is there and present. What I love is that this is on the other side of the circle. right? This is close to my former resort. This is close to the access to my current resort. This is close to the parks. It's close to restaurants and facilities. I'd like to applaud this company and their vision. They're taking private investment, which is something we heard a lot about a long time ago, and they're spending an awful lot of money to come in and do what our community needs. And they're getting rid of an eyesore in this community. We talk about not wanting our people to go buy a big, beautiful building, but yet it's okay for them for the last 12 years that I've been on this island to drive by those blighted buildings. So I think we should consider that and think about that. They've really done a very nice job. Filling these units is not going to be a challenge. Ms. Bryson, we had talked to USCB 5 years ago working on a similar project. To answer your question, back then it was $3,500 a semester for housing, and included their food. So we were working on this same sort of partnership back then and just couldn't put it together. But these guys have a very solid plan, and they have the financial backing to support it. On the other note, you have housing over in Tidal Bluff right now. Drive by and see how many cars you see in July. None. H-2Bs don't have cars. We transport them. So the parking issue I don't think is an issue, to be honest with you. I understand it's in the LMO and such, but it's not going to be an issue for this. Thank you very much.
Okay. Alan?
I did want to speak to the safety and security points that came up, certainly a hot topic. The first time that the Surge partners, the mayor of our group, Rob Jordan, and myself were approached by our now partners, the developers, about this, we were offered, would you like to rent dorms? We said, we don't have any visa workers, we have no J1 workers. And we said, we believe for the south end of Hilton Head, 450 to 500 beds is the wrong product of dormitory for that area. Would you please, this is a year and a half ago, please reconsider building 1, 2, 3, 4-bedroom units there so that it can serve a wider swath of our workforce and not have 500 heartbeats there, maybe half that, which presents half the security risk. It's a far better use in terms of safety for the area. And the developer has gone on for a year and a half to get to this point, when that same footprint could be built out with 45 units. Sean has helped us do a buy-right analysis, and 8 or 10 beds could end up behind every one of them. I'm fearful that if we continue to demand more and more of developers across the island, we miss the opportunity to capitalize in this case before it turns into the wrong product for the south end of Hilton Head, which it could be by right. We begged them not to do that a year and a half ago, and here we are today. So I hope that factors into your discernment. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Are there any other public comments? Sadea, would you call the question, please?
For the motion.
Bryson? Yes.
Ms. Becker?
Yes, and I would just want to say that the public comments were impactful. I appreciate them when they come forward. He's left, but perhaps someone in this group can show me a sample contract of what a lease would look like from a business for the employees. I'd like to see that information. As well, and I'm sorry, as well as the other piece that I want to throw out there, lots of different things were mentioned, and I agree with them all. The parking, I do believe, is going to ultimately be an issue either now or later, and so I can't overlook that piece. And the other piece that I'm having difficulty with is not having anything in writing with regard to this commitment to this particular type of use, and where that open-endedness leaves us for the future. And so if y'all can work on that piece as well as a commitment. I understand the goal, I get it, but something in writing so that it would applies to y'all as well as others. Thanks.
Ms. Becker?
Oh, I said yes.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Ames?
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion passes unanimously, and I encourage staff to get with the developers ASAP to try to make this happen. Okay, next item on the agenda. short-term rental ordinance implementation update.
Mr. Chair, perhaps we could have the cliff notes on the update.
Yeah, I'll make it quick.
Thank you. I'm here at your pleasure, but thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good
My name
afternoon,
is-
Barbara.
Oh,
Go ahead.
my name is Barbara Worcester. I'm the Revenue Customer Service Manager for the town of Hilton Head Island. I'm thrilled and honored to be here today
Welcome.
to talk about our updates for the short-term rental ordinance. As you may or may not know, this project took on quite a large amount of people for the town. These are the main people that helped us with this project, but I will tell you, it spared no department. We ended up having to use somebody from every department, and everybody's been involved with this. They say it takes a village. Well, this particular project took a whole town, and I'm honored to be working with these people because we have some really brilliant people working for us here. Key dates, as you know, in May, you all approved that short-term rental ordinance. August 15th, I was hired, brought on board. 2 days later, we executed our contract with our vendor, GovOS. A couple of weeks later, we had our initial kickoff meeting, September 1st, and by December 20th, we began training our staff on the new GovOS system. We are happy to announce we met our January 3rd go-live date. We had a couple little blurbs here or there, but basically we went live and people were able to apply and pay for their permit. Things that we've completed in this short time period. As you may know, this all took place in a matter of about 16 weeks. So in a matter of about 16 weeks, we developed, customized, and implemented the short-term rental portal. We had it designed, all the writing and how it was going to be in the applications. We developed interdepartmental workflows. We had to understand how every department was going to flow and work within this process. We came upon a problem of needing site plans. So our IT team, which I can't say enough about, came up and created our own GIS app so that the homeowners could create their own site plan. In addition to that, we were able to create and finalize the town's Good Neighbor brochure. This was something that a lot of the departments have wanted for a while, but we finalized it and it's published and it's on the website and ready for all our owners to download and provide. In addition, we hired 2 additional code enforcement officers and 3 full-time temporary staff members. In order to get this all completed, we held meetings weekly, sometimes more than once during a week. Some of the members were not happy about that, but it was the only way we could meet that January 3rd deadline, so I kept them on a short leash, and we were able to get it completed. One of the major portions of this project, other than IT, was the communications department. I can't say enough about their influence and how they participated and assisted getting this launched. This was a comprehensive multimedia plan. These are some of the items that we took care of. We enhanced the webpage with detailed information, and that's something we continue to do. We will continue to update the webpage as we need to. As the questions change, we're changing our facts and our information that we have on the webpage. We produced 6 videos to share on all different social media platforms, and we've had some good response regarding that. We appeared in TV and print media videos. We launched a full short-term rental social media campaign that was shared across all the different social media platforms. We sent a total of 6 news releases, which reached approximately 9,000 recipients. We hosted 6 in-person and virtual information meetings at Town Hall and at Island Rec for residents and property owners and so forth. We had over 600 people attend these meetings. Some meetings were live streamed, recorded, etc., so that anyone could could follow as needed. We also hosted additional stakeholder meetings with Shipyard, Hilton Head Island Beach and Tennis, and the Hilton Head Vacation Rental Association, among others. So, brief history, again. In November 2022, we launched the public communication plan, which included, like I said, public and stakeholder meetings. We developed a complaint hotline with workflows and phone scripts. As you know, this new STO program has a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week complaint hotline. We engaged in software testing and development. We trained our short-term rental implementation team, and we established processes and training for the temporary new positions that we have. In October, November, December, GovOS has been busy researching and identifying the different properties that are renting here on Hilton Head. And in December of 2022, GovOS prepared the letters and sent out over 7,000 letters to potential short-term rental property owners. We began training for staff in late December, right at the deadline of when we went live. Got us a little nervous, but we were able to complete our training for staff. We will be training code enforcement and some other departments as we move forward. As I said, over 7,000 identified properties received correspondence from the town and from GovOS, and they were contacted by letter as well as email if we had it on file. And like I said, within that 16 weeks, January 3rd, we met our go live date, and the short-term rental permit is now open. And as of this morning at 9:45, we had over 2,000 completed applications and approved, and we've got about 900 still in the queue. So within a matter of about 14, 15 working days, we've really accomplished quite a bit. I'm very proud of the temporary staff that we have. We've accomplished a lot. And with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Barbara, I'd like to say just a couple of things. I watched you and Ms. Lewick make a presentation at Shipyard, and I just want everybody in the room to know how beautifully you handled that.
Thank you.
There were so many questions that you were able to answer, and it really was a good representation of town capability. I have also seen you make the presentation at the rec center, where the crowd was somewhat more skeptical, and again, you and your staff and John Troyer and others who were there were able to answer tough questions and defuse some of the angst of the people who were there. So thank you very much. I see some of your cohorts here. Can you give us their names or have them introduce
Certainly,
themselves?
John Troyer, Finance Director, April Akins, Customer Service Manager. We have Ms. Kathy Lee, who is one of our full-time temporary staff members, who just got flowers for her excellent customer service from a short-term rental owner, I might add. And we have our other staff here too, Karen and Marie Garner also are here with us. We've got a good, look at all of us. And Missy and Sean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to thank you for the incredible marathon that you've been on over the last several months.
It's been a ride.
Yeah.
It's been a ride.
Other questions or comments?
I think this is an extraordinary story that you've shared about how you've gotten this up to speed so quickly, and I certainly salute you for your efforts in that regard. You've talked about 7,000 units have been identified on the island. Are still new STRs being identified, or do you think that's...
Absolutely, day by day. Unfortunately, this is something that is not an exact science. It changes by the day and by the minute as people are buying and selling. But GovOS is continuously scrubbing the information and updating the database, so we are continuously identifying new properties.
So you've identified, I think, about 2,000 applicants that have been approved, and you have more in the queue. Are you hopeful of getting almost all of these 7,000 units under license and permit?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's our goal. That's what we're going to meet.
Keep us apprised.
Well, GovOS gave us a platform of about 90% within 1 year is what they were going for. But quite frankly, the way we're going and the way the staff is going, I think we will absolutely beat that record.
Excellent. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Bryson? Okay.
Thank you. I have questions. So of the 2,000 approved and those 900s that y'all are still working on, how many, two things, how many of those are coming through via a property management company? And how many are, if you know, are coming because they are individuals who rent their homes on their own?
I can't give you exact figures because I wouldn't have that broken up, but I can tell you that right now we're getting it from all different angles. Because we have worked with, like right now I'm working with Vacasa and a couple of other property management groups. Because we have worked so closely with them, we're getting assistance from the property management companies. In addition, we're getting people that are just coming forward from hearing about it. And then we're also getting the people that were notified by GovOS. So it's coming from all different angles. I would say the majority of them were identified by GovOS, but we are finding that people are coming forward as well.
So the property management companies aren't necessarily taking responsibility for all of those contracts that they have. It's individuals within. Okay, thank you. And then in terms of reviewing site plans, which are used for a variety of reasons, I'm sure, but parking in particular, how is that looking? How is that
We're finding, you know, we weren't sure how long it would take and so forth, but we're finding once we took the time to educate the staff and what to look for and what not to look for, that it's becoming really like a fine-oiled machine, because we find most people are using our app to create the site plan, so we know that it's coming out the way we need it to look. So the process has been pretty easy so far.
So is there any tracking being done with regard to how many parking spots are being identified and permitted versus how many rooms per build?
All that information is being kept, yes.
So that is being kept.
Yes,
so that
ma'am.
data is going to be able to be reviewed later. Okay, good. That's important. And then I would also just make the comment, and this may or may not be true in these instances, but generally speaking, the GIS is not necessarily completely dependable.
Correct.
Have we found any difficulties within reality on the ground versus what GIS is showing?
It's such a small percentage. I've had a few people, like maybe a handful, maybe two, you know, maybe a dozen or 2 dozen, where maybe the GIS mapping and the longitude and latitude didn't quite match up, and they were one house off. But you know, judging from the 7,000 that were sent, it's a very small percentage. So I'm actually pretty pleased so far with the results.
Good. And those parking places aren't impinging on any crosswalks or sidewalks or anything like that? They are completely contained on the property?
They're supposed to be, right. And when they affirm to that, it should be.
Okay.
So.
Is there any field verification?
We're taking it on a case-by-case basis. In other words, if there's a complaint and so forth, then code enforcement will go out and verify the measure and so forth, follow up.
And keeping in mind that our estimated number in GovOS saying that 90% or thereabouts within the first year would be in compliance, and you feeling optimistic about that, are we still feeling fairly confident with on the 7,000 number? And I'll just leave it at that, it's fine.
I would say 7,000 is a conservative number, because we have to remember that GovOS pulled this information in our what we would consider our slowest quarter. In other words, the December month, January month, so this would be our quietest time. So I think the numbers remain to be seen, and I do expect them to increase.
Okay. Do you think there's any reluctancy in terms of people coming in and paying their, or getting their permits because there's only one method of payment through the credit card online?
We have had some pushback on that. You know, we kind of expected that. And again, it's a handful, maybe 2 dozen people that have pushed back on it. But for most people, once we kind of explain that, you know, we're looking for another option for the future, and we appreciate your patience, they go ahead and take care of it. But we have had some pushback.
I would suggest that that's an important piece, because any barrier that they see that they can use, and I don't mean this way, this is not coming out the way, any barriers are not good for the ultimate outcome. Right. So if we can correct that, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Missy, Would you like to add a comment?
Thank you, Barbara. I just wanted to add to that while we did identify through GovOS the 7,000 short-term rentals and sent them letters to apply, they are identifying additional advertisements and sending out notices that they also have to comply with the regulations as well. So as more get advertised, then more get notified that they need to apply for a permit. And also, it was in the presentation, but I wanted to note that we are working on a dashboard with GIS, and so sometime toward the tail end of the first quarter, we hope to have a public dashboard that identifies where we stand with short-term rentals, and that data will be public-facing.
I'm very interested in the location of short-term rentals on the island. Of the 2,000 that have stepped up and received their permit, do we know at this point what geographic areas they come from? Is it all over? I think this is important for future policy. So I would like to be aware of that distribution on the island.
And that's something that the dashboard will be able to provide to us. I would have to say right now, we're so young in our data that we have nothing to share with you yet. But I believe, by the first quarter, at the end of the first quarter, we should have more of this implemented and you'll be able to see that information.
Great. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. Mr. Babel, would you like to add something? I know it has something to do with bikes.
He already had his time.
I'm standing between you and lunch.
If you don't talk too long, it could be dinner.
Okay, I got 3 minutes. I think short-term rentals were a great way that Hilton Head Island got going. It gave homeowners an opportunity to buy a place and conceivably afford it, although numbers never really worked out, but it at least gave you opinion that you could get rentals in there and then show up and then eventually retire like I did. I had a short-term rental. Unfortunately, short-term rentals are like kudzu. And once you get a short-term rental in your neighborhood, your community begins to change. And then another one comes in, and then another one. And before you know it, your community has become a commercial zone. And you have people out there that you just don't know who the heck they are, and they're wandering around. And it's like kudzu. It just keeps on growing. And once it gets going, you can't stop it. And it just keeps on growing and growing and growing. And guess where we are? We have kudzu on this island. And it's overtaking this island. And it's really something we just have to be very, very serious about. It contributes to our growth problem. In fact, it may be the root cause of what's happening here. Too many timeshares, too many rentals, too many of these short-term rentals are happening all over. I have a friend who is in the ocean community in Palm Coast, and all of a sudden, people started showing up on streets that were million-dollar homes and so. And he said, who the hell are these people? Well, people started renting. He said, wait a minute, what are they doing here? And so the whole community got together, and they created a district. And they went through hell, but they created a district where they put the short-term rentals. And there's enough there to keep the people happy. And the people who had short-term rentals and the districts that were changed and not allowed to have short-term rentals, they could do 3-month rentals, but not short-term, actually were okay because their property values continued to increase. And the community is back on track, and of course they're getting sued all the time, but it's really working. So I don't know, the toothpaste is out of the tube, and we can't really stop it. You just can't declare no short-term rentals, but there are a lot of places around where you can warn the people, kudzu is coming, get your act together, do an ordinance, don't let short-term rentals take place because it takes 75% approval, I think. Create a POA or whatever it is just to stop it. It's a problem, and we have to do something about it. And I love your idea, David, about keeping track of it, because that way we can see how it's going. I think you'd be amazed at how you see this sucker just creeping up and growing through our community. Contributing, not contributing, creating our problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Yes, Mrs. Sharon. Thank you for being patient.
Thank you. Kieran Storn, Follyfield. I second everything, obviously, that he says, and you obviously know my views on short-term rentals. I know that it's early days, but I would really encourage the town to involve the residents in this. And it's really for Missy. When the dashboard comes out, I think that would be a useful tool for the residents. The residents can tell you where the rentals are. So GovOS, I'm a software engineer and electronic engineer, so that's my space. I know what it can do and what it can't do, but residents can tell you that that house there is a short-term rental. So if the POAs are involved and they have access to these tools, then they can basically verify what GovOS is telling you. I would like to see a little bit more emphasis on the resident in all of this program. I commend your staff for getting everything done in the space that they did. But parking, what house is approved for what parking? I think that's key from a resident perspective. The phone number, the hotline number, obviously the people who are landlords and renting out properties have access to that, but from a resident perspective, it's really, really hard to find. So it's not front and center on the website. So just little things, but again, I commend the staff and the town for what you've done. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Babel mentioned short-term rentals, sort of we're here at the beginning. I think what has so changed the environment is that now we have short-term rentals in single-family housing neighborhoods and the online capability of marketing internationally to individuals and so on. And I think those two things have changed, sort of fed the kudzu, so to speak. But having said that, Barbara, again, I want to thank you for the presentation and your work over the last several months. Congratulations, and as well as to the rest of the staff who has been working on it. Thank you very much.
And just stealing 1 second more about short-term rentals and following up on some of the comments that have been made, correct. A lot of our difficulties now in so many regards is directly related, correlated strongly to short-term rentals. And so this is a major problem that needs to be brought under control as we're moving forward and trying to correct other things across the island with regard to development and our capacity as an island to maintain. In terms of residents and being able to contribute information, know how to utilize this system to the benefit that it was actually created for, which was to maintain quality of peace and life in a neighborhood, that couldn't be more important that that is made as public and in as many places in as big bold letters as humanly possible as soon as possible, right? Because this is actually up and functioning. We're not waiting for all of the data to come in before residents can take advantage of it. So that needs to be done. And I really do believe that in the next coming months, as this begins to really fully develop, that more resident input and opportunities to identify and help to add to the 2,000 and growing number that may not willingly or obviously step up will be useful. So keeping all of that in mind, it is coming to the forefront very soon.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'll try to make this 4 quick bullet points. One, I'm looking forward to collection of the data, which would be essential to us making decisions in the future. Second, we've already identified during this meeting today that growth management is of great concern to the town council, and the staff is working on that. And I think that short-term rentals will be addressed during those modifications that staff is looking at. Third, the PPC, the Public Planning Committee, has now on its plan for the fourth quarter of this year to look at the second phase of short-term rental management, if you will, because we don't yet know what that's going to be. We've seen a forecast of that, but it's on our calendar as proposed. And then lastly, it was suggested previously during the first phase that there be an advisory committee appointed to assist us with this review, which would include residents as well as those who manage short-term rentals and as well as those who own. And I'd like for us to I'm looking at Ms. Becker, who's the chair of our Community Services and Public Safety Committee. Perhaps we could accelerate establishing and appointing that committee.
We adjourn.
We have one more. We have review of the calendar year 2023 proposed public planning committee pending policy matters. Is there any comment to that? It was delivered to us. Let me just see if we need a presentation. Does anybody want to review that at this time? No.
I just want to make two really quick comments about it. One is thank you. Thank you for setting out a plan. I asked for that, and I know it's subject to change, especially in light of the strategic plan workshop, but thank you. It's a great planning tool.
Is there a motion to, we don't do your motion, it's perfectly fine, thank you. Consideration of the proposed meeting dates for the calendar year 2023, is there a motion to adopt?
Move adoption of the schedule of events as written.
Second.
Second. I guess we can call the roll, please.
Mr. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Bryson?
Yes.
Ms. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Ames?
Yes. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much for your patience and long support.